All right, I promised I would start at exactly 6 o'clock, and here we are. So the city of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. I'm going to call the public hearing for Monday, June the 20th to order and ask the corporate officer to introduce the public hearing process and the first item on the agenda, please.
So the Local Government Act requires a public hearing be held before council adopts an amendment to the zoning bylaw or official community plan. Hard copies of the staff reports and related information respecting the subject amendment bylaws have been available for public examination at City Hall since May 17th. At this public hearing, all persons who believe their interest in property to be affected by the proposed bylaw shall be afforded an opportunity to be heard on the matters contained within the bylaw. Anyone wishing to be heard on the bylaw amendment must come to the microphone at the appropriate time and clearly state their name and civic address or city of residence. Council requests speakers restrict their presentations to the proposed bylaw. The purpose of this public hearing is for council to hear from interested persons in relation to the impact of the proposed bylaw on their property. Council's authority is limited to regulation in relation to the use of land. Council does not have the authority to regulate or prohibit in relation to the user of land. As such, council requests speakers restrict their presentations to the proposed bylaw and the uses permitted under that bylaw, and refrain from any comments in relation to possible users of the subject property. Council will not tolerate inappropriate personal attacks or comments which are discriminatory or defamatory. The function of council this evening is to listen to the public presentations and not to engage in debate. Whether you are for or against the proposed bylaw during the course of the public hearing, council asks that you not display any outbursts as a courtesy to all present this evening. Council asks that you treat all speakers with respect and neither cheer or applaud when you agree with the speaker's presentation, nor jeer or boo when you disagree with the speaker's presentation. Council wishes to ensure every speaker has a fair opportunity to be heard, that the environment at the public hearing is a positive one, and that individuals do not feel uncomfortable or intimidated from expressing their views either in support of or in opposition to the proposed bylaw. Again, council will not tolerate comments or behaviors that are intimidating or create a negative environment, which deters people from speaking. No presentations or submissions will be received by council on the proposed bylaw after the motion for termination of the public hearing for the proposed bylaw has been adopted. So this evening, there's one item on the agenda, the Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 200133. It proposes to alter the downtown commercial C3 zone with a site-specific text amendment to allow residential occupancy on a portion of the first floor of a mixed commercial multi-unit residential building at 164 Alberni Highway. And as of 4 p.m. today, June 20th, 2 items of correspondence have been received in response to this application, and they are attached to the public hearing agenda.
Thank you. You're expected to know every word that she said when. Okay. I would like to invite anybody who would like to speak to come forward and forward to the microphone. You'll have to give your name and your civic address for the record, if you don't mind. So please feel free. Who would like to be first? Nobody wishes to speak? We don't bite. You can speak if you wish. Please feel free. All right. I would like to call for the second time to invite anybody who would like to speak to come forward. We're not hearing or seeing anybody. And for the third and final time, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to speak or come forward. Oh, we have somebody coming forward. If you could come to this one, if you don't mind, sir, please. We're going to need your name and your civic address, if you don't mind.
Name, William Atwood. Address at Heather Place, Parksville.
Okay. Please.
I
go
was,
forward.
the ad the city puts in the local PPQ news attracted my attention. And I was wondering, first of all, I'm sure most of the citizens, when they read the piece, that it's bylaw 2022, number 2000.133, amendment to bylaw 194, number 2000. I'm sure most of the citizens will really snap onto that and know where it is. And I looked further, and there is a map attached, so to help you understand it. The street names on the map are 0.5 millimeter high. So for most people, unless you had a magnifying glass in your pocket, which you carry with you, you'll have no idea where this is. Well, it certainly won't attract anybody's attention. And so I started looking at it. And I was wondering why this was so. Are the people that are doing the development, don't they want the public to know about it? What they're doing? For example, that there's a huge development right across the road from where they're asking to build. And maybe people have questions like, is this in conformity with the OCP, the official community plan? Will there be any parking downtown in Parksville? A lot of people who work in this building are going to have find a new place to park because the one across the road is going. There are questions like this that people might like to be interested in. And when it's advertised certainly it's not advertised in a way that's going to attract everybody's attention. And one hopes the air is not going to smell like French Creek. And the other questions that come up, as we've had before when we've had approved development, the sewers aren't big enough and the water mains aren't big enough, so we've got to do all that. So there's far more involved than just parking or whatever is going on downtown. Now, it will help people who have business downtown because there'll be people within walking distance of Rod and Gun and other places. But I say just the way it was presented made me curious as to what was really behind the development and how far. It doesn't mention how tall the building is going to be in this ad, I don't think, or other such trivial details. That got my interest going. I'm very interested in what other people have to say, and maybe I'll learn something. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other speakers? One more time, for the third and final time, I'm going to invite anybody who would like to speak to come forward. I'm going to then ask for a motion from council to receive correspondence. Need a mover and a seconder for the correspondence. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Just any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Ask for a motion to terminate the public agenda hearing for zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.133. And just a reminder to council, of course, that we will no longer be able to communicate with any new information on this particular site at this point in time until it is taken for a vote. So I need a motion to terminate the public hearing. Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, all right. That's fine. So as I was just saying, I'm going to advise the public that once the public hearing is adjourned, council cannot entertain further submissions or correspondence from the public on the proposed bylaws. At the conclusion of the public hearing, and ask for a motion to adjourn. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Fraz, Councillor Wilson, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So here we go. Good evening and welcome to the June 20th meeting of council. The city of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. We also recognize that tomorrow, June 21st, is National Indigenous Peoples Day, a time to recognize the rich heritage, contributions, and diversity of First Nations, Inuit, Métis people across Canada, and the important role Indigenous people played in the history of our country. We are excited to celebrate the reopening this week on Saturday at 10 o'clock of the Parksville Community Center. The PCC has undergone a significant renovation and is the new home of the PGC Parksville Child and Family Center. We look forward to showcasing the renovated spaces in the Parksville Community Center, kids' activities and games, storytelling, refreshments, and a chance to tour the PCC. We hope that we will see everyone there on Saturday. On Tuesday, July the 5th, we will officially dedicate the new Memorial Plaza, which is located on Memorial Avenue at the Alberni Highway. The event starts at 5 p.m. with the ribbon cutting, entertainment, and cupcakes. Council looks forward to showing this new public space off in Parksville downtown. So moving right along with the consent agenda for items A and B, we have a couple of amendments to the agenda. First one is the revision of Councillor Chandler's notice of motion to a standalone motion under agenda item 7B. And the addition of a notice of motion from Mayor Main regarding grant funding for the seaside cruisers as agenda item 7C. So with those amendments in mind, I'm asking for a recommendation for, and a second, I'm asking for a mover and a seconder to the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'm pleased, very, very pleased to welcome the students from the Ballenas Secondary Social Justice class, grade 12, I guess, is it grade 12 class? And please come forward and present your proposal to council. Thank you very much. I think you're all set there.
I think we are. Hi, thank you so much for having us. A quick introduction. My name is Grace Dick. This is Carissa Hargreaves, Sophia Shaw, Shirley, Craig, and Jenna Chamala. The last member of our group, Sam Mahoney, could not make it today.
We are a group of grade 11 students from Ballenas Secondary School. A crucial part of our Social Justice 12 class is a large
Before,
project.
I'm just going to ask you to do me a favor. Can we turn them, not you necessarily, but somebody can turn the volume on the mic up, perhaps?
For sure.
Okay.
Should I restart? or do you-
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh,
A large project involving directly impacting the world around us for the better.
Each of us represents a different part of the district. 2 of us live in Arrington, 1 in Anus, and 3 in Parksville.
We each have a goal, a mission, and we greatly hope you share our passion for ensuring that the youth of our community live happy, healthy, successful lives. One day, the urge to build something for the youth in our community grew so large that we could not ignore the possibilities of what we could do. As our group grew, so did our group. As our project grew, so did our group. And now the 5 of us stand here in front of you. There we go. You may be wondering why a bunch of teenagers are appearing as a delegation in a city council meeting, and we are here to propose a community youth center. The main purpose of the youth center is to create a safe, inclusive space that provides for youth in as many ways possible. 3 ways for the youth center to provide for local youth are through affordable meals, exercise learning spaces, as well as through mental, physical health support.
You may be wondering, who else does the youth center serve? How does it serve the rest of us? Almost every graduate from Ballenas High School plans to leave the district post-graduation. Part of this is because they feel that the district has nothing for them and that there is a lack of support in their teenage years. A youth center would change that.
If we foster the talents and passions of youth while providing them with a safe, secure space to eat, study, and be themselves, they will be more likely to stay. And if they stay, instead of moving away after high school or move back after post-secondary, this district gets more workers, more diversity, and additional new creative ideas from experts in many fields. The whole community benefits from the uplift of our youth. Now, we aren't just here to talk about our ideas, but also to showcase the needs of our community and the ways local youth are being failed by the district supposed to protect them.
We have signatures, survey responses, and poll results, as well as the collected opinions of local youth and teens.
Each of you has a folder. Inside, you will find a copy of our full petitions, a print of the digital petitions, a copy of the PQB news poll, and all survey responses. The blue tab in the folder will take you to the petition copies. We have collected 15 digital signatures, and as of June 2nd, we had 95 physical. Many of these come from students and teachers of Ballenas Secondary School. The yellow tab will take you to the Parksville Qualicum Beach newspaper poll. We sent in a suggestion for their question of the week a couple weeks ago and were pleasantly surprised when it ended up in the newspaper for the following week.
The question exactly was, would you like to see a community youth center in Parksville? The participants of the poll came from throughout the community and were not limited to students. The results of the poll ended up 24% for no and 76% for yes.
You'll see that the pink tab takes you right to the results of our survey.
We asked a number of questions. Most were yes or no, but some asked the opinions of the people taking the survey.
A few highlights of the survey are this. People throughout the community took the survey and advocated to us for a youth center. The majority of responders said that themselves or a loved one would benefit from mental, physical health support in a youth center, an affordable meal program, or peer mentoring and tutoring.
A shocking amount of responses also believe that the youth in this community have nowhere else to go.
We asked 2 questions, allowing people to respond openly. The astounding response to both of the questions was that the youth in this community are lacking a safe space and necessary resources. Let's talk about what the youth center would include. The green tab will lead you to a smaller copy of the layouts. There you go. The first floor would have a gender-neutral washroom, a cafe, a gym, the elevator, the stairs, the office, a couple seating areas, and vending machines, because we all know how much teenagers love those. And the second floor would have the mental physical health support, the library, study hall, gender-specific washrooms, elevator, stairs, the rec room. One of the largest components of the youth center is the meal program. The meal program would be free or close to ensure that children, youth, and teens in this community never go hungry. The cafe would give the youth center income and sell things like bakery items. Community partnerships would be essential to the function of this center, partnerships with local grocery stores and markets especially. These partnerships would make sure that the grocery stores waste no food and that no kid goes hungry.
Another essential thing in this youth center is the health services. Growing up is one of the hardest stages of your life and is often when mental illnesses develop. Having accessible help for youth could mean the world. Access to nurses and smaller necessary things like STI testing, contraception, and birth control for youth and teenagers. Another community partnership would be with the Family Place and Vancouver Island Health. This partnership would mean access to health professionals, even ones in training or over digital mediums for the youth in our community, as well as supplies.
The rec room provides a space to rest and relax. Youth and teenagers spend their entire high school lives rushing to finish assignments, to graduate, and to get to their after school or summer jobs. We never get downtime, and there's always something to be done. The rec room would feature various games and activities for youth and teens to enjoy, giving youth a place to be themselves, hang out with them friends, and focus on what makes them happy, which creates a happier and healthier life for them and those around them.
A study hall in the youth center is another key component. Access to information and the internet is not possible for some of the youth in our community. Providing them with this access could greatly increase their grades. Teenagers are bombarded with schoolwork at all times, especially in grades 11 and 12. If they can't do what they need to do at home or school, where do they go? Tutoring and mentoring are most helpful when done by someone at the same level as you. Another community partnership would be with Ballenas or other schools to offer volunteer credits to students for tutoring or helping out at the youth center.
Another way for the youth center to provide for the district is through community spaces. One of the main ideas of the youth center is to promote happy, healthy lifestyles for local youth and the entire community. Part of this can be accomplished by providing a place for kids and teens to run around, work out, practice a sport, or just play a friendly game. This space and others can be rented out to groups and organizations in the district that are looking for a space, and they don't necessarily need to be youth focused.
There is more than big rooms and large programs to the youth center. And these are a couple of our favorite things about our proposed space. The washroom on the first floor is gender neutral, and the ones on the second floor are labeled male and female, ensuring that everyone feels safe and welcome. The entire space is also handicap and disability accessible. We would love it if the youth center contained bright, beautiful murals and works done by local artists and students at multiple schools, as well as a wide selection of pride flags. The fish tank behind the couch on the second floor adds a pop of color and brings more life into the youth center. It was also a very popular request. A community youth center in Parksville could revolutionize the way our youth grow and learn. Having a safe space for them to be themselves and build long-lasting connections is crucial to our future. The youth center would be a partnership between the citizens of Parksville today and the citizens of this community tomorrow. We greatly hope that you will take this into consideration, and we'd be happy to answer any questions for you or provide you with additional research on the topic. Thank you so much for having us.
No, thank you for coming. You guys did amazingly well. Very good. Nice information provided. And to your families, whoever are back there, they should be proud of you for coming forward with this idea. Does anybody here have any questions for the delegation? Councilor Frass.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I think that was really well done. You guys have thought of a lot of the aspects of this youth center, and I really liked how you really put a lot of thought into the design of what that building would look like. I'm curious as to where you think would be a good spot in Parksville for a youth center. Where do you think the youth would like to see it?
We have a couple ideas for more permanent spots to build something, and a couple other ideas like the building on Shelley Road as a temporary location.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor O'Brien.
Thank you, and through the mayor, great job, really good job and very professional, I gotta say, right down to the color-coded tabs. That helps me. The question I have for what you visualize anyways, You're talking about the meal plan and a place to hang out and, to shoot some pool or whatever it is like that. Who do you feel is going to be managing the facility itself? Running it, the cleaning of it and everything like that. Who would be actually running the center?
We can think of a couple volunteer organizations like the SOS and a couple others that might go for management. But I think, and the family place and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the ground operations and the smaller things would be volunteer based, which is when Ballenas comes in handy, right? Because we need volunteer hours to graduate. There wouldn't be a better place to volunteer.
Right. Just a quick question. So are you thinking of a standalone location, like a separate site and so forth? You suggested that maybe some sites could be over on Shalley Road and so forth. But you're hoping like you've actually got right down to like an elevator and, upstairs and a downstairs. So you're looking for 2-floor facilities, everything. Would it be suitable if, like you took over or took a portion of another already existing center? Like I know you suggested maybe that's temporary, but the thing is or would that be something more of a permanent solution type of thing to get you up and running first, looking at some maybe existing facilities that are already built?
We would be happy with any space, especially spaces that have the infrastructure to provide for some of our ideas and some of the programs we'd like to put in place. Yeah, or build something new, keep it recycle something already there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegation. That was wonderful. Very enlightening. And you've put a lot of thought into that. You know that the Boys and Girls Club, when they open, they are going to have youth programs. I know it's not exactly what you're looking for, but that might be worthwhile seeing how they might work with you to bring about perhaps more programs for you for the time being until this idea gets thrown around a bit more and ideas flowing as to how we could help build something for you or make this happen. So thank you.
Anybody? Councillor Wilson got the jump on me on that one because I was going to suggest to you as well that the Boys and Girls Club of Central Vancouver Island, although they may not be exactly what you're proposing here, I think that if you have the conversation with them and tell them exactly what you're looking for, I'd be willing to bet that they would be very amicable to work with you and come up with the programs that you need. I think they've got the facilities and everything. They also have the wherewithal, the dollars and the cents to be able to help you, which is going to be a big ask when we get this done, especially if you're looking at doing a freestanding building and so on. It's going to be an extremely expensive proposition. I really like what you're thinking. I remember when I was in high school, yes, they did have high school when I was that young, but when we went to high school, a bunch of us took over an old fire hall and did exactly what you are proposing. It was a place for us to go and do all the things that you're talking about. And it did help many of us do a lot of things. So I really respect your forethought on this. I would like to, again, recommend that you go and talk to them. And if you like, come and talk to me and I would be glad to make the arrangements and we can have the meetings in my office if you like, just so we can put it together. I want to see this go a little bit further and see what we come up with, okay? You've taken the first step. Let's see if we can go a little bit farther with this one and make it happen. I would really like to do that. So thank you very much. Councilor Franz?
Yeah, thank you. Just have another question, please. Just in your presentation, you mentioned about being a 2-floor facility. Is that a requirement or is it just is that based off the Shelley building that's already in existence since you mentioned that, or?
It's not a requirement at all. It just started as a way for us to essentially fit in as many things we wanted as possible.
Right. So if it could be down on 1 floor, that would be fine as well. Maybe a little bit easier for accessibility too. I got to say too, I really do like the idea of a fish tank. I think that would be a
Fish
great
tanks are
thing.
great.
And as the mayor mentioned, like with our community center next door here, possibly a good fit as well. But I know there's other centers around us, including there's one on Mill Street too. Might be a good fit to go speak with them and see if they are able to accommodate some space. There's many different groups around town, and I hope that we get to see you back and see some of those partnerships come together, because it does take a lot of work as far as the managing and feeding the fish and preparing the meals. So I hope a lot of success to that, because I would like to see you center as well. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for coming forward. I've seen a lot of youth requests and everything in the past. Nothing makes me more excited than when youth come before us. In the past, we used to have a council liaison, and I don't remember if we have one in this term.
We haven't had one for.
And I'm not sure if maybe you wanted to touch base one-on-one or anything with this group. And that I was just trying to see how the mayor's already volunteered his time and everything to get you together with the Boys and Girls Club or SOS or other different groups, Family Place and everything in the community. So I was just going to put it out there that Councillor Fraz is also one of our youth liaisons, and as I've been one in the past too, and met with your different classes and that too. So maybe having one of us come and chat with you in class would also be beneficial for you. So thank you again.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it to you to contact our office here, and we would love to have conversations on it and see if we can push it further down the road. Councillor Fraz will be, he already nodded his head yes, so he's going to be talking to you in the very near future. Give us a call, please. Yes, and that's a good point. And the facility is going to be open on Saturday. You can come over there and take a look at it and see if that's kind of what you're thinking. It'd be a good thing. It's 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And if nothing else, you get your face painted. All right. Or treats. Yes, there's food there. So thank you again. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. And keep going. Keep going on this. Don't give it up. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Delegations. The next one comes up. Ms. Bate with the Oceanside Community Arts Council, please come forward and present your application for sponsorship.
Hello and good evening. Thank you for welcoming me here. My name is Jennifer Bate. I live at 703 Lowry's Road, Parksville. And I'm here representing the Oceanside Community Arts Council, as well as the Macmillan Arts Center, of which I am the current executive director. I would also like at this time to introduce my colleague who is here via Zoom. Her name is Patty Ann with a P, a local artist and also a member of the Community Arts Council. So welcome, Patty Ann. I'm here today to talk about BC Culture Days, which is is part of a larger project called the Canada Culture Days. This BC Culture Days events this year takes place September the 23rd till October the 16th. And we are very excited to present to you 5 separate arts events that we are proposing for our community coming up in the fall. I wanted to just share a little bit about the Canada Culture Days. They've got a brand platform with brand values. It's based on this that we've designed these 5 events that are coming up in the fall. And I just wanted to make sure that that we are a part of not just representing BC, but that we are part of the brand values and culture of the Canada Culture Days project. The brand values are leadership, courage, collaboration, and inclusivity. And with that in mind, the 5 projects also represent the brand personalities of being curious, something that's going to energize people, encouraging, empathetic, welcoming, relevant, and unexpected. It's an arts project. These 5 proposed events are unique to the community. There's nothing else happening like this around. And thanks to my colleague Patty Ann with the P, we think that all 5 are going to be very attractive to different people that are in our community. The first is the Ukrainian Culture Festival. This obviously is a very relevant conversation that we are having around the world right now. The second is a banner hunt, an art banner treasure hunt. We are returning with the Exquisite Corpse Collaborative Art Exhibition Project. And then, of course, the Bedazzled Bra Breast Cancer Awareness Project. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we've got a fun project that we've included in that time period. And then an Island Shorts Short Doc Film Festival that we are happy to host at the Macmillan Arts Center in our new digital media gallery. Ukrainian Culture Fest is going to be a 2-part event. We have temporarily booked next door at the Parksville Community Center. It's going to feature a performance by a Ukrainian dance troupe out of Nanaimo, as well as a workshop to create vinoks, which are the traditional floral Ukrainian headdresses. Here's a couple of pictures of what that is looking like. So with that in mind, we are hoping to have a half-day workshop in the PCC for people that would like to come in and make a vinok traditional headdress. And then, of course, be invited to join the Ukrainian dance group performance that will be there to follow. We are going to be staffing this with project coordinators and volunteers, and anybody that shows up will be able to make their own traditional headdress that day. And then, of course, next slide, please. We are bringing in the Nanaimo Ukrainian dance troupe. The traditional dance performance is a feast for the senses. The venue is going to be on the stage at the PCC. And our objective is to offer this performance to uplift our community and to welcome our new community members, families that have fled their homeland. We know that there are several families now that have come and moved to Parksville. And of course, we would love to have them welcome them as well. The second project is called the Banner Hunt. It is a fun treasure hunt to encourage people to come downtown and spend some time in the downtown business area. The banner hunt itself involves 8 banners that will be created by selected local artists. And it's a treasure hunt style event where participants will get a map showing the locations of these 8 banners. And once they locate the banners, then they can get a stamp on their map and then receive a T-shirt depicting the events that are happening, or the images that are have been created on the banners. These 8 local artists then will be recognized as well on the T-shirt, and on the map we're hoping to have a little bit of a biography of the artists and a selection of their work. The next slide shows some samples that have been used for this sort of thing in the past, and it's going to be colorful and a really fun thing for people to do when they're looking at their map. The third project that we're presenting and hoping to have in partnership with the Bayside Inn is the Exquisite Corpse event. This is a collaborative art project involving 45 different artists in the community, creating 15 different banners. Just as a bit of history, the first Exquisite Corpse game was created in Paris in 1925 by a group of surrealist artists, in which a collection of images were collaboratively creative. The fun part of this project is that there are 3 parts of this canvas, and each of the 3 artists that are assigned to paint the canvas have no idea what's been created before them. The 3 images then become the head, a torso, and feet of a creature. And then it's unveiled at an opening event that we had at the QF last year. It was a very successful event, and we expect that it's going to be a highly anticipated event again this year. Interestingly enough, the name Exquisite Corpse came from a word version of the game where each contributor added a word without knowing the words that came before, resulting in the bizarre phrase, "The exquisite corpse will drink the new wine." The 45 contributing artists will participate in groups of 15, paint their segments in a studio setting. As I said, the Bayside Oceanfront Resort has offered up their space, not only for the painting of these canvases, but also for the celebratory opening event that will be taking place in October. Tentatively, we have chosen that the unveiling of the artworks will be Saturday, October the 15th. And the Bayside Inn, once again, will be having these exhibition on display until the end of October. Some examples of last year's Exquisite Corpse event are up on the screen. Our fourth projected event will be the Bedazzled Bra. Once again, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is the month of October. This Bedazzled Bra event will be featuring bras that are decorated and submitted for this event. Last year, we had 8 beautiful bras created and on display at the MAC. We are hoping for a really good response this year. The October, as I say, is Breast Cancer Month, and we're hoping to display these maybe in the atrium of the City Hall area. We would be putting the bras in plexiglass boxes. People can vote for their favorites with a loonie or a toonie, with all money going towards a local family or person that is struggling to overcome breast cancer. Lastly, we have the Island Shorts Film Festival. This is a festival that will be of interest to young people that create the TikTok short videos. We've got 2 amazing judges that would be judging all of the films. This short doc film festival would run for the same dates as the BC Culture Days, September the 23rd till October 16th. And we would host this event at the Macmillan Arts Center. We have yet to decide on a theme, but with the objective is to engage young filmmakers, and we will accept up to 40 films for judging. The screening will be going on, as I say, ongoing at the MAC Digital Gallery, and awards will be awarded for the top 3 films, and then of course the People's Choice film. We are hoping then that the films that are chosen by the public will be announced on October the 17th, and the award-winning films will be shown on our large screen in our digital gallery at the MAC. The proposed budget for these 5 community-based events are as follows. The Ukrainian Dance Fest, you can see there the things that we've put together, including the booking of the PCC stage, the entire facility all day. And then, of course, it's going to be open to the public by donations, with all the proceeds going to the Ukrainian charity. Ukrainian Culture Fest, where they're making the headdresses, the Vinox with supplies and whatnot, is there at a total of $16.05. Our banner hunt, we've got t-shirts for participants that are going to be participating and collecting their t-shirt. The banners and the installation of the banners came to $1,300 with a small artist stipend for the banners. The maps themselves could be printed on site at the MAC as well. The Exquisite Corpse event involves supplies for the artists, paint, canvases, t-shirts, as well as participation gift certificates, and then the gala evening, which is the opening at the Bayside Inn. Our Bedazzled Bra event is a nominal amount because people are going to be donating their bedazzled bras. We have materials cost of the acrylic boxes and the signage. It was recommended that these bras are kept safely in the acrylic boxes, and that's where the materials cost has come from there. And lastly, our Island Shorts Film Festival with the judges' fees, as well as the People's Choices Awards. The digital gallery is going to be donated, and there's the fee there for the Island Shorts Film Festival. Our admin costs are nominal, including advertising, as well as a contingency fund of $1,000. So if we put it all together, there's your grand total that we're asking for sponsorship and support of this 5 major events that we're hoping to have in our community. And as a closing statement, just to reiterate that these are 5 BC culture events. They've been carefully curated to meet the brand values and brand personalities as stated by the BC Culture Days. We are proud to be a part of Canada Culture Days. BC Culture Days is an important event for us as an arts community. Last year, there were 52 local communities in BC that participated in the BC Culture Days. Because we're proposing to have 5, we then become a hub, which means we get additional support and marketing from the BC Culture Days people. 2022 is also the 10th anniversary of Canada Culture Days, and we look forward to celebrating together the rich history and culture of our city. I'd love to take questions if you have any.
Certainly. Do we have any questions for the delegation? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Jennifer. Jennifer, always nice seeing you in person here. I appreciate you taking the time. You bring so much energy to your organization. And it's Very appreciated. Thank you for that. Just a question regarding, you've broken down the individual categories and so forth, and you're looking for support. You're looking for sponsorship for individuals or just a donation, like from the city of Parksville, I'm talking here. Are you looking for sponsorship for just like one event type of thing, or you've got a grand total of 25,940, or are you just looking for a contribution that would go to that to be put into the grand scheme?
No, we're hoping for the entire amount to be sponsored. We will be looking for other sponsors of the event, but this is, these 5 different events have been separated. So if we don't get our full ask, we'd have to obviously use whatever we get from the city and the support and have to make a decision perhaps to cancel one of the events that we've got planned.
That answers my question. I was going to ask about other sponsors as well. So you're pursuing that as well.
We're always pursuing sponsors as an arts organization.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't really going to ask a question. I was going to ask council to consider a motion that we support this project and take the funds from our contingency.
Business, or do you want to take it here? Okay, that's fine. As long as we take it here, I'm fine with it. You're making the motion to, and you are seconding? Okay, discussion. It's yours, so.
Thank you. I think that we didn't support this last year. There was, it was a bad time. We've had COVID. And I think the community really does need some more arts and culture. We just can't get enough of it. I think we've been locked away so long. And this is a really interesting, healthy project that I think will stimulate a lot of minds and bring a lot of I don't know, just people to Parksville to enjoy this. I really think it's something we should consider. And so I fully support this, Jen.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Jennifer. My question actually is to our CAO. Just as a refresher for last year, the BC Culture Days came before us a little too late and everything in the year. So I'm really, really pleased that you're here now. But there was some grant funding and everything available last year. So I'm not sure if anyone can answer that for me.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Patterson. Yes, the proposal last year was to use the COVID recovery grant. That has been expended at this point. We don't have any money left over. But I assume that the motion is to do the full amount from council contingency. And so that is, if council wishes, that is a fine way to do it. Usually your contingency is $25,000 every year. Hasn't been a lot taken out of it this year from what I can recall. In fact, I can't think of anything yet. And what happens is if council just goes over their contingency, it just gets recorded in the amended as being over by whatever amount it is. So yeah.
Be with you in a second, Councillor Fraz. My understanding or my recollection here is that we did put it out on the table, and the Downtown Business Association felt that it was they didn't have the time to proceed with it, if I recall correctly on this. So that's where it was. But I'm open for discussion. Councillor Fraz.
Thank you. I guess since the motion is on the floor, and I'll speak to council through his worship here. I think I'd like to request that we defer this to our next meeting. And I recognize that with the delegation here, we're able to take this motion on the floor. But I haven't had a lot of time to consider. I think the events are wonderful, by the way. Like I don't see any problem with them. I definitely would love to see them happen here. But to me, it's just weighing out some considerations like the amount against the fact that we do have a grant committee and how we've navigated through our grants previously. I think taking this right now on the fly would not be in line with how we've approved previous grants. I think there's more consideration for me I need to do to have time, chance to think of this than just a knee-jerk reaction to it. So out of respect of that kind of process, I'd like to defer it to our next meeting.
You are making a motion to defer.
I
That's what
am.
I'm hearing. I need a seconder for that motion. Is anybody, Councillor Chandler is seconding the motion. Discussion? Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Jennifer. Yes, we really appreciate what you do. We're lucky to have you in the community and all the things you do for the arts and culture in this town. Apologize for my voice today. I'm a little ill, but basically I'm in full support of doing lots of things with you this year. I think we've sort of skipped over the last couple of years when things have come up, but I do agree with Councillor Fraz. That's why I seconded the motion that I think we need to have a good review of this, and just out of the overall, aspect of making sure it's fair to everybody. We want to be able to assure that we're looking at this positively. But also, the only other question I would have is there, when you talk about the gala dinner and so on, what sort of a dollar recovery do you get from the gala dinner? You talk about an amount being $2,500. Is that your costs?
That is the cost, sorry, that would be the costs for the Bayside to produce and host the gala dinner there. It's not a dinner, it's a cocktail reception.
And is there any charge to the customers or the
No,
participants?
all of the events that we're proposing are free.
They're free, okay.
Mhm.
Just, if I could just remind council here for a second, this isn't up for deferral, not for debate on it. So we're just discussing whether we're going to defer it or not the content. If you don't mind, then we can go from there. Any other comments, Councillor O'Brien?
Microphone. Through your worship, is it possible then to discuss, I had another question regarding the amount of money and sponsorship, or because I'm afraid that if we defer it, I'm in favor of deferring it too, but I didn't want to let Jennifer go without actually asking a question on the sponsorship as to whether that would be for the full amount or what happens.
I'm sorry, Your Worship, if I may, we're not supposed to be debating the deferral, so you're supposed to just vote on the deferral. And then,
Yes.
yeah,
Can't speak to it after it's been deferred.
if I may, you could still ask questions that are not part of the motion.
Okay. To
That's
answer
fine.
your question, Councillor O'Brien, just for a second. Councillor Fraz, Councillor Chandler, can I ask you just to hold off on your deferral for one second? And then withdraw your deferral and then put it back in again.
If I may, I think then it would be best if the main motion was withdrawn so that we could continue discussion with delegation, and then we could bring up, I think this would fit well in our new business at the end though too, but I'm fine to withdraw the deferral for
We're saying
now.
the same thing. All right, so fair enough. We don't need to vote on that. No, we still have the motion. The original motion is still on the floor, and we're going to continue with that. And we're going to bring it up at the end of the meeting under new business, if that makes sense. Pardon? You just said you were going to withdraw. Sorry, did I misunderstand?
I withdrew my deferral, but the
Yes.
motion still stands. So I think
Yes.
if the motion gets withdrawn, then we can continue discussion.
If I may, Your Worship, sorry to interrupt there, but
I'm going back and forth like a ping pong ball.
we can
here.
still debate or discuss the motion and ask questions, and then the deferral could be made later after some of the questions have been answered. So if
That's where, I'm sorry, that's where I wanted to go with this. So if I wasn't clear, my apologies on it.
the
So,
motion is still on the floor, but the deferral has been withdrawn.
all right, keep going.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Now
With
ask
the
your
clarification.
question. Now ask your question, please.
Thank you. Through to Jennifer. In the event, the motion on the floor anyways is to provide the entire total of $25,940, as I understand it. You also mentioned that you're currently always seeking out the sponsorship, maybe for different events and so forth. How would that work out? What I'm saying is, like, my position is I want this, your program to go through. in its entirety. And if that means, contributing 25,940. But my position is how would that be able to be possibly reduced if you sought other sponsorship for, say, a portion of an event or another one of the events, whereby the city would not just hand you 25,940 and then you get sponsorship for, say, the Exquisite course or something like that. How could that work? Like, we don't know who else you've applied to, whether you have other grant mechanisms you're applying to as well.
Thank you. If you are supporting us in the entire amount, we will not be looking for other sponsors for this particular project. I guess I was referring to the fact that at the MAC and the OCAC, we were applying for sponsorship for all sorts of different projects. This particular project in itself, with the entire sponsorship being offered from the city, would mean that we don't have to go after other sponsorships for these 5 different events that we're doing.
Any other comments? We're now at the end of the conversation.
So through his worship, if I can make a motion for deferral of this to our next meeting.
Seconded by Councillor Chandler. I assume we've lost him.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You're still in there, Councillor Chandler? You can hear us?
Yes, your worship.
Okay, there, moved and second. All right, all those in favor of the deferral? Opposed? Please note that Councillor Wilson and Councillor Patterson have voted against the deferral. It passes.
Can I just ask a question? Does that mean you guys want me to stay till the end of the meeting to
No,
discuss it
it's going-
further, or?
It's
Okay.
going to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, your worship, if I could have just one more comment to Jennifer before she leaves. As I say, I'm pleased that you showed up here, Jennifer. You have a more recent event coming up, and I think it's worthwhile for you to maybe get a commercial in at this time. A Tale of an Urban Creek is coming up. If you could just maybe just give us a brief synopsis on what that is, and the dates and times would be helpful.
Absolutely. We are producing another installation exhibit for the summer months. We haven't done one since COVID, and we're jumping in and producing an amazing installation exhibit called A Tale of One Urban Creek, featuring 8 separate artists that are going to come together and talk about Shelley Creek. It's all about water conservation. It's all about water gardens. It's about how we can take care of our local streams. Shelley Creek is one of the last waterways that has fish in it. And because of the hard work of the Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat Enhancement Society, as well as others, slowly but surely, we're finding more fish stocks again in Shelley Creek. The conversation is current. It's important. I know that Shelley Creek is also an important project for the city. We are looking at this conversation through an artistic lens, featuring the work of Robert Held, who is going to be producing an amazing centerpiece for us, a waterfall completely made out of glass droplets, 400 of them, I should say. We're welcoming back Christopher Smith and Nelson Shaw, who produced the wonderful glass fish. We also have the work of Jesse Ricalma High-Ups, who is a hereditary chief of the New Chelmsford Nation, is joining us again to produce a family curtain. It's going to be an amazing summer project. Part of the project is called Ethos, and we are welcoming back the organizations, the RDN, the Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, VIU, the Deep Bay Marine and Research, and they will be creating fun and interactive displays in our studio for the entire month of August in concert or in partnership with our beautiful installation exhibit. So we'd like to invite everybody to come on down this summer. We're looking forward to welcoming visitors and showing and sharing with them an important conversation for our community.
Thank you very much. Pardon? Yes.
If I may, can I
Yes.
ask a question? Would we be able to get your slide deck to review as well?
Sorry, say that
Would
again?
we be able to have a copy of your slide deck to review?
This is the
Presentation that you gave us?
Yes, I believe I have sent it. You'll get it through Amanda. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, next delegation. Ms. Hartman and Mr. McEown. With BC Housing Management Commission, please present your temporary use permit at the VIP Hotel.
You just press the arrows to. Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is John McEown. I'm the new Director of Development for the Vancouver Island region for BC Housing. I'm joined today by Heidi Hartman, Associate Vice President of Supportive Housing and Homelessness for BC Housing, and Dr. Sandra Allison, the Central Island Medical Health Officer. We're here today to discuss our request for a temporary use permit in order to ensure the individuals living at the VIP motel are able to continue being housed there as we work on a permanent solution for these individuals. Before I get started, I also just want to acknowledge that we're presenting to you on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and we're grateful to be here. So just again to reiterate why we're here today, we're seeking approval for a permit to facilitate a non-permanent supportive housing facility until March 31st, 2023. This supportive housing building is operated by the Oceanside Homelessness Ecumenical Advocacy Response Team Society, which we'll call OHARTS for the balance of this presentation. This building's been operational since October 2021. During this time, it has provided a home with supports to many vulnerable members of this community. So in this period until March 31st, 2023, we will and have been working towards a permanent housing solution for the individuals currently at the VIP motel. And we want to work with the city to identify a suitable long-term housing option that works for the residents and the community. But in that interim period, we're requesting a temporary use permit. So just to reiterate, the proposed housing at the VIP is not a shelter facility. It provides homes with supports for individuals at risk or experiencing homelessness. It's being operated under BC Housing supportive housing model. And I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Heidi, who can talk more about the operations of supportive housing and the model.
Thanks, John. So just to speak a bit about Ocean Place and the model of supportive housing. This supportive housing site is consistent with our provincial model of a resident selection process. And what that means is that community members, including health professional, outreach services, other nonprofits, are involved with the placement of each and every person that moves into the housing site. We have a supportive housing registry where here in Parksville, we have 70 on the list. We take a look at the person. We do a vulnerability assessment, and there is a very thorough screening process. I'd like to share a bit about who's living there right now. So we have 20 current residents, 14 of which are male, 6 are female, and 2 of those identify as Indigenous. What's very unique about Ocean Place is that over half the residents are over the age of 55. And with the provincial role, I'm able to tell you that we don't usually see that percentage of seniors within a building. In fact, the oldest is 77. So John clarified that this isn't shelter, this is housing. I'd like to talk a bit about what the differences are. So for shelters, very often folks are lining up on a daily basis for their beds. It's access to a bed on a temporary basis. 3 meals are provided. If it's an EWR, extreme weather response shelter, or a temporary winter shelter, very often those facilities do close during the day. There's no rent payment at a shelter, and there's shared sleeping space. We do fund outreach workers to support with folks on the site. And supportive housing, which we're talking about tonight, I clarified the resident selection process, the coordinated access table, I'm really thinking about each and every person that moves into the housing. 2 meals are provided, as well as access to a kitchenette within their unit. People don't have to leave during the day, so they can stay within that housing and they're not roaming the streets waiting for the shelter to open. And rent is paid to the landlord. It's a private, self-contained unit. And very important here, we have 24/7 supports on site to support the folks within the housing. You're probably wondering what kind of supports are at Ocean Place. There's experienced support staff there. There's a support worker specific to that site only. We're very fortunate on the island to have great partners in our health authority partners. So there's addiction medicine physician. The Ministry of Social Development visit the site as well and make sure that folks are connected to income supports. There's access to mental health and substance use team, public health attend, and we also engage with peer supports through the Mid-Island. Our First Nation Health Authority partners are very important to the integral success of this site. And coming soon is actually having an on-site nurse. I don't know if you want to speak to some of the health.
Yeah, thanks so much.
supports.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the partnership that I have with housing, and Heidi and my partnership, I think, has been really tested during COVID and then proven to be very strong. And I just really want to reflect that in the health space, we know that housing is an important determinant of health, and the medical health officers across the province are working really hard to ensure that our communities are recognizing the importance of housing and the role of collaboration, ensuring that all of the people that live in our communities are safely housed. So thank you.
So I talked about the importance of the staffing levels. So just to confirm again, there are 24/7 supports at the building. That's in addition to the hotel staff that are there as well. And that's a front desk staff person. During the week, there is a manager who's on site and available for after hours emergency. At request of community, we did add security and they're on site 8 hours a night. We've supplemented the security of the hotel by adding security cameras, panic buttons for the staff, and as our commitment to community to be responsive, we developed a who to call sheet. And that's a standard document that we have around the province that we distribute to community members and neighbors to let them know when to call us and how to call us, or the operator.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi, and thanks, Dr. Allison. Just the last slide here. I just wanted to show the housing continuum, and BC Housing is really committed to providing housing across the housing continuum, considering the need all along the continuum. This specific project falls on the left-hand side, housing with supports. It's provided vital care and housing to some of the most vulnerable people in the Parksville community. The supports provided meet people where they're at. They provide vital assistance in the journey to permanent housing, and I can provide a few statistics on that. Since October last year, 10 residents have moved on to subsidized market or other types of housing. 2 residents have moved on to resident treatment facilities as well. So again, we're working to create long-term solutions for people at risk of or experiencing homelessness in Parksville. We know that permanent homes offer the best opportunities for the people we serve. But in the interim, this has been really important housing. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and we'll now take questions.
Thank you. I would like to remind council that your questions should be limited to the presentation. You will have an opportunity to make your points for or against the temporary use permit later on in the agenda. So please, if you could, address your questions for the delegation. Oh, sorry, Councilor Frass.
Thank you. And through his worship to our delegation here. Thanks for coming out to chat with us about this today. I know this has been, like as you mentioned, up and running since October, yet this is the first that we've had a chance to speak to you about this. I've got a couple of questions. My first question is, how is it that you came into this building to bring up the supportive housing? Was this a place that you were invited to? Did you seek it out? How did this get started?
Happy to answer that question, Counselor. So we were originally, as a response to COVID, opened up spaces at the Travel Lodge Hotel. When there was a fire there, we reached out to partners within the community, and we were able to obtain a lease through the VIP.
Okay, so then I do recall it being a COVID housing option, so it does seem like a bit of a shift now from that. How is it that you guys were operating out of here, not in compliance with the zoning and maintaining the operation of it? Like, I know you guys are here before us now to ask for a temporary use permit, but how come operation wasn't suspended until you achieved that, or why was an application for a temporary use permit not sought sooner?
I can take a stab at that. I mean, I don't think ultimately we were responding to an emergency situation with the fire, and provided this housing quite rapidly in that instance. Having conversations with the cities, and I understand it's been since October, and that's a larger gap. But we identified that it wasn't in compliance, and that's why we're here today to come forward with a temporary use permit application.
Maybe one more. If your temporary use permit application wasn't to proceed, if you didn't get the support you guys are looking for, would you guys maintain operating out of compliance now, or what would your plans be? Sorry, the microphone.
I just wanted to address certainly housing as a determinant of health. And when we think about a situation like this, to urgently displace 20 or 22 people, that might be comprise a health hazard. And without somewhere for them to go, especially people that are 55 and older, half of them with multiple medical concerns. So I would be personally very concerned if I heard that there was absolutely a drop dead and they had to be out. And that would be something that I'd be wondering about. What kind of hazards would be introduced by that decision? So that would just be my immediate reaction. And so also that's why I'm here today, is to just really support the team. And I recognize that permitting, in this situation, it was an emergency situation. And so I personally am very curious about working through the opportunities that exist here. And the temporary use permit, when I heard it was only March 31st, I was thinking it needed to be 2024, like at least a long enough time to get.
I guess the question is, would you guys plan to still operate with or without a permit?
I don't think I have an answer to that today. We are looking for solutions. We know that there's these folks in the community that need permanent housing. So we want to find a permanent solution for these individuals.
Thank you.
Any additional? Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to the delegation. Thanks for coming here and helping out. You, Heidi, I believe you mentioned about for the community, you have a who to call sheet and so forth. Am I correct in assuming that is like gone through the neighborhood, like a certain radius through the neighborhood, like a pamphlet dropped off, or is it just dropped off at the time? And what does it go to other agencies as well, the various agencies we have in town, as well as our own city staff, compliance officers and so forth, and obviously the RCMP?
Yes, so thank you for the question, Councillor O'Brien. That who to call sheet was circulated within the neighborhood. I don't have the measurements of what that is. Usually it's a good proximity. I know it was also taken across the street to the McDonald's and other commercial spots. And if we're hearing that folks need a refresher and that document be circulated, we can definitely make sure that happens. It's also on our website. So if people have questions about the site, we are able to share that information through the website as well.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation, I do have some questions, if you don't mind, just clarification on some of the material here. One of them is that I just want to say at the outset, you refer to the housing need in Parksville. What about Oceanside? Are we the only people that you're looking at? Or are these people coming from elsewhere? Or these people magically appeared, 70 people here in Parksville? Can you maybe address?
Sure. We take our applications from, so outreach workers would be engaging with folks on the street. They may be connections through other nonprofits like SOS. And that is how we collect our applications. Some folks do submit applications by mail and send them to our office. But I would say for a smaller community like Oceanside, those applications come through our community partners who are actively engaging with those who are experiencing street homelessness.
So you mentioned, Heidi, Oceanside now. You specifically did say Oceanside. So these people are Oceanside, not Parksville.
I don't have the specifics
Okay.
on, what percentage or
But they are Oceanside. Okay.
Parksville and Oceanside.
Okay, that's what I wanted, clarification. If I could, Your Worship, I have a few things just to
Go ahead.
clarify.
I'll stop you when you get to the end.
Okay, thanks. Appreciated. So just another thing, I'm curious, when it caught my eye on it's page 136, when you talk about the security and each staff member wears a panic button. It just right away, I thought, how dangerous are these people that you need a panic button? It's just a little bit worrisome. It caught, I don't know whether that's the reason, or maybe you can explain that.
Anytime that folks are working alone or going
Okay.
to units, obviously health and safety of the residents within the housing, the staff, and the outside community is best practice. So
Okay. Just let's see, there was another. Page 135, residents pay rent. But then on page 141E, it says, but they can't have visitors.
that's correct. The folks that live within our supportive housing sign program agreement. It isn't under the Residential Tenancy Act. So for that reason, very, very often our supportive housing sites don't allow guests. In particular with COVID, that was enforced provincially for the health and safety of everybody.
So I just want to make a comment because you brought up the issue of this emergency, and I guess it's perhaps going back to what Councillor Frass says. I believe this started out as a shelter, and it didn't come.
No, it was a COVID response. It was provincial model as a COVID response to bring people in off the street and get them connected to health services.
Okay.
And people have been paying rent since that would have been September or October 2020, actually. So if it was operating as a shelter, rents wouldn't have been collected at that time.
Okay, so I guess I'm just a little bit confused because we're starting from 2019 when BC Housing said they were looking. So I'm just trying to connect all the dots as to where we are now, because in your notes, there's a little bit of confusion about whether you're looking for shelters in addition to supportive housing, or if you look through this, there are kind of missing gaps for me that I'm a little bit confused about all the things you're looking for and how come it's taken BC Housing so long when we did talk quite some time ago about this way back in the fall and early in the new year about, or even before the new year, about finding these folks permanent housing. So, and then the lease was renewed again it was to expire in 2022, and it's been renewed even though we were still waiting for you to apply. The zoning was still not you were aware that the zoning was not
I'm-
appropriate?
I'm going to interject here at this point. I think we're getting off into what the conversation will take in the.
Well, I was just trying to understand how they were explaining that.
Quickly, please.
Okay, so I'm just still confused about, what we're looking at and how it got to here and how it's taken so long. That's all. Just, you're saying that they're looking. And so we don't want to throw these people out, but there've been promises that you're looking and it's been a long time. So maybe you could answer that.
Yeah, I can. Since I started in this position on February 1st, I've been actively looking. I was sent, different opportunities, which I can't speak to publicly, but we are actively looking for a permanent solution. And the request is due to the need for more time to do that and do it with appropriate engagement and make sure it's the right solution.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for coming forward. We definitely would have liked to have seen you sooner. And I'm wondering if that relationship will always be that way. I guess is kind of my concern is it's after the fact in many cases. Dr. Allison came and we had a lovely meeting and everything, but I feel that we maybe didn't get all the information of things that were happening. It's just my perspective. Ocean Place, it's already has a name, and that, how did that come about?
We find that temporary winter shelters, extreme weather, they all have a name. So even the shelters that we have provincially, and I'm speaking with my provincial hat on, even the shelters that open November 1st to March 31st, and they aren't open every day, we find our nonprofits who operate them give the sites a name. So that would be very common for a site to be given a name. These are homes for folks, and hence the name. Very often what we'll see is the community within the housing sets the name for the community because that is their community.
Councillor Patterson, thanks so much. When we had our lunch and learn, I would not have presumed to tell the story for BC Housing in any way, shape, or form. So I don't feel like I held anything back from you, and nor did I actually think I have awareness of the situation at that time.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hello to everybody in the delegation. Heidi, it's nice to see you again. I just had a couple of things to mention. Firstly, I guess my biggest concern is we had no signs or any information about what was going to be happening at this property until we saw a wood sign over top of the VIP signage. No indication from anybody that essentially everyone knew, including our MLA locally, all of the other folks that were involved, and yet no mention of this to our mayor that I'm aware of, and we certainly didn't know anything about it. So we're all kind of caught off guard. I think our relationship with BC Housing in the past was really, healed with the work that you did with Malcolm and yourself. I think we had a really good relationship going. It's truthfully, I'm a little bit soured just by the way this has all been handled. And I totally appreciate it's an emergency situation and things of that nature, but there's a lot of variables attached to that. And I think, approaching it a little differently and properly, it could have been a lot easier process and we wouldn't be dealing with this right now. That's just my 2 cents on that. The other part of this is that with that location, I totally appreciate there's some 55 plus guys in there that could be me. I mean, it could be any of us, right? So I totally appreciate that. The problem that I see is that there is some younger folk in there, and there's some issues where we're seeing a lot of concentration of people downtown, creating a lot of grief at our Salvation Army thrift store right in the heart of downtown. And these folks are coming both from Orca Place and they're coming from the VIP. And what's happening there is there's thrift bins and garbage bins being pulled apart, stuff everywhere, total carnage downtown, and open drug use, yelling, swearing, fighting.
Excuse me, Councillor Chandler.
Yes, sir.
Can you hold those comments to the question when it comes up later on in the agenda, if you don't mind, because I think that's more relevant to that, if you don't mind.
I certainly will. I guess the reason I'm bringing it up now is because this is an opportunity for them to speak against it or about it, whereas they won't have that chance later. So I was just looking for a comment back. That's all.
I'm thinking, I want to clarify the question at hand. So the fact that you're saying that folks from both Orca Place and Ocean Place potentially may be causing some challenges within community. What I would say to that is our experience has shown that once you put a roof over someone's head, they aren't on the street using because they can safely use within their own home. That's been our experience, and that's why we bring people in so that they can get those medical supports. They can start on that journey to wellness. Our experience is that if people have their own home, they're not on the streets. We recognize that BC Housing has more work to do with community. We do need a shelter. We need housing along the continuum to be able to solve homelessness and connect people to health supports.
And maybe I'll just add to that just in terms of the timing, because I'm hearing and in our communication, I'm hearing that comment come up quite often. We are here now, and I am committed, and I think we all are committed to working with you and continuing to identify solutions. So just want to acknowledge that we do hear that, and yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Raz.
Thank you, and through his worship to our delegation. I hear you say that you're wanting to work with us on this, but there's a few things I'm struggling with here. And it's one, I hear this is a temporary thing, but you're looking for permanent solutions, that this will carry on to, it could be 2023, could be 2024, with or without a permit, it'll still proceed. Saying this is housing, it's not a shelter, but in your who to call brochure here, it clearly outlines it and calls it as a name, Ocean Place Shelter. So I'm not seeing the continuity in what you guys are asking for or what you're saying to us, but you're asking us to work with you, but it seems that it's a free-for-all. So I don't really know what we would be agreeing to at this point.
I appreciate the point about the document staying a shelter. The fact that people are paying rent excludes it from being a shelter under the BC Housing Program. So we'll definitely look into that and update the who to call sheet. And I definitely understand the confusion that could create by that word. But I would just go back to the point that our residents are paying rent, which excludes it from the emergency shelter program or even an emergency response center.
Okay, well, thank you for that response here. The question I have then, if this is operating as supportive housing, which you described it at one point as, does it operate under, what rules for the residents? Do they have a resident agreement that they follow? Is it, like I know at Orca Place, they have a program agreement that they follow. Is this following a program agreement, or as you mentioned, like in housing, people are free to do as they want because there aren't any limitations in someone's home? So what is it like for the residents that live there?
So residents sign a program agreement, and there's rules on conduct, the no visitor policy. And we'd be happy to be able to provide those documents to council if that's helpful.
That would be helpful, yes. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, I'm sorry, because of the sunlight, I can't see you very well. So if you were before Councillor O'Brien, accept go ahead, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I hear, John, your comment about you're currently looking at other options, which we really appreciate. I guess we would we really would hope that those, since Heidi's already cleared up that these clients are from Oceanside. And I hope that it seems to us personally that Parksville has been the drop zone. And let's be fair, it really has with the various BC housing proposals, which is fair enough. But the thing is that I would hope that you would be able to give us a commitment that since it is Oceanside, and Oceanside's a rather large region, that you seek solutions not only in Parksville, but in the other Oceanside areas as well. Would that be a reasonable expectation or an ask?
Yeah, I can say that when we were looking for an extreme weather shelter, when we were looking for temporary shelter, when we were looking for an emergency response center, we looked beyond Parksville. You know, John and I participate in a weekly real estate call where we talk about communities, each and every one of them on the island where the pressures are. And our real estate team actively look at solutions. You may remember that when there was the incident at the Travel Lodge that we were able to secure, I think it was a community resource center that was in Arrington, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that speaks to our commitment to look, you know, we're trying to be as creative as we can. When we have situations where there's 20 people that are going to be displaced into homelessness, we want to find continuity of housing, because you've heard the successes from October. You know, 12 out of 22 people that have either got treatment or moved into market housing. And that just speaks to the fact that supportive housing and connects work. And it also reduces, you know, the downtown activity when people have somewhere to go and they're not congregating downtown, outside businesses, impacting those operations.
Councillor Wilson, then we're going to wrap it up on this.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just a couple more questions to clarify. It sounds like this is very much like 222 Orca Place. Is it the same type of model,
It would be
Heidi?
this, yes,
Is
supportive
it?
housing model.
So basically, you've put another supportive housing project in Parksville.
What
Basically.
happened in response to COVID, BC Housing did use hotels as supportive housing sites to bring people off the streets and reduce the incidence of COVID.
So there, it sounds like, I'm trying to understand how this particular BIP works in this situation and where these people are coming from. You're saying people displaced. So are some of them coming from Orca Place? Some of them going back to Orca Place, going to ours? What's the turnover and how, like, I remember sitting in the OCAP meeting, and I'm not sure if you were there, Dr. Allison, but at one point someone said that that people, there's a 2-week, there was some kind of 2-week rotation in there. So they don't stay there all the time. They're bringing them in. They kind of stay there for 2 weeks. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, there is something on OCAT and I can get that information, but it sounded like it was a sort of a flow through place rather than a permanent. And I was definitely the VIP I'm talking about, because I got those notes from that meeting. And there was about a 2-week, and then they had to move on to recovery of some sort. So that's why I'm really still a little bit confused about how this works. And just one more thing, Your Worship, if I could, is BC Housing really ever going to start looking at a dedicated recovery facility, a regional dedicated recovery facility, and stop putting people all over the countryside in these little small towns that cannot take it, that are tourist driven, and just really nip this problem in the bud and build a recovery center? Question for you.
Well, what I will say is that BC Housing takes a housing first approach, and I've shared with you the stats that people have gone on to recovery. Just since October, 2 people have. we found tremendous success, and we've got Dr. Allison here that can speak to what the health authority is providing in terms of mental health and addiction supports. But I think it's also important to state the fact that not everybody who's in supportive housing, it has mental health or addictions. I think there's a lot of generalizations made, and I just want to let people know they may be folks that have developmental disabilities and have supports from the CLBC. They may be people that for systemic reasons have found themselves homeless. So I never want to generalize. I can say that absolutely BC Housing, we want people to travel down their respective journey to wellness, but that looks very different for somebody over other people. And we do look at opportunities, and that's why we create space within our supportive housing for clinical supports, medical supports to come in, so people have access and they don't have to go downtown to get the clinical supports. We bring them in.
Councillor Frass.
Thank
And then
you.
we're
And
gonna
through his
wrap
worship,
this.
to our delegation. Last question I have then too, and I'll mention too, I do hear the successes and the benefits of supportive housing too. I'm not going to ignore the fact that the good work that they do. One of the successes I think that came out of Work of Place, or a couple of the successes there, I think comes from the fact that the shelter component was removed. So there's not that transient aspect to people in their housing, but also as well, you guys formed a advisory committee, a community advisory committee made up of neighborhood residents and people who are invested into that area. Would you be doing the same thing for this place as well, so that neighbors will be able to have their input and be able to touch base with the workers and so on, keeping that kind of finger on the pulse with the community and coming up with good neighbor agreements as they're.
Absolutely. If community is asking for that, absolutely. We'd be happy to host that.
Would you guys take the initiative to form that though too? Because I know as a resident, it's a lot to go and make that kind of ask to BC Housing and be the one to spearhead it. But I do think it was a component that added to making it a success that
Absolutely.
we've
We'll
seen.
explore that. First thing tomorrow is just reaching out to community through the operator to see if there is interest in a CAC or Community Advisory Committee. Thanks for the suggestion.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Went on for a while, but that's good. Got all the information out. And as I said, it's coming up later in the agenda. You're more than welcome to stay if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3, correspondence. We have one piece of correspondence. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to receive. Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Fraz. All those in favor? Carried. WSP Reconnaissance. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Assessment Parksville Wetlands Report. And need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Fraz. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Second one. Ms. Woods, please present your report on the Parksville wetlands.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, Council. Today, I'm going to be providing an overview on the information that's applicable to recent works in the Parksville wetlands pertaining to 550 meters of new trail that was built starting near the Renshurst entrance. And we're going to go over a wee bit about the Parksville wetlands history, hazards and liability, the actual project overview, some summaries of concerns, our actions, and ministry reviews and reports, the recommendations on the go forward from our qualified environmental professionals, as well as additional staff recommendations. We'll also be looking at a partnership opportunity and some funding options in this report tonight. So in our historical overview, thank you. While there are many years of history regarding the Parksville wetlands, previously known as Ermineskin Park, I'm just going to stick to those particular things that are pertinent to this report. Previous to the city purchase, the property was owned by the Ermineskin Band. It was cleared, from our knowledge, twice in the last century. It was clear cut for development. There's been various pathways, trails, and culverts and drainage that were constructed prior to the city purchasing the land. In October of 2017, the city of Parksville acquired the land at fair market value with an agreement to dedicate the parcel as public park through bylaw. In 2018, a previous council to this one named the park the Parksville Wetlands until an official name could be chosen. At the April 2018 Parks and Open Spaces, that definition was added to our Parksville Open Spaces bylaw, Parksville Wetlands. And from my understanding, I wasn't here, but we had to do this more than one time because we had some confusion about the mapping and the location of this area. Since the 2017 purchase, city staff have completed various trail improvements and additions throughout the park to keep the area safe for public, to protect and rehabilitate previously disturbed areas, and improve the connectivity to support maintenance and emergency services. So whenever as a city we acquire new properties, facilities, or works, we also inherit the risk and liabilities that go along with these new acquisitions. And when we're looking at public trails and urban green spaces, we always look for accessibility, overhead hazards from trees, as well as slip, strips, and falls. In this particular area, there's identified more than 200 dead trees in an area that we did not have access to. A part of this area is also in our wildlife hazard DPA, which we always balance human life safety and our public liability risk with our environmental values. In 2017, MIABC came and did an inspection for us. Frequently, we have MIABC offer to do inspections for the points that we earn, and they come in and do these for free for us. In this one, as you can see, there were several modifications that they required of us to mitigate some of the risks in the current trail system that we had. In 2019, our staff reviewed trail standards in a MIABC conference. We did, now looking into this, there is a gap that we don't have a trail specific standard for a wetlands area. Our greatest liability is, and our primary hazard in this area is fire. During the summer months, the dry grasses, weeds, and other vegetation pose a significant risk. That is why it's in our wildlife interface management part of our permit areas. We've had several brush fires. We've had increased homeless activity in this non-accessible portion of the park. In July of 2020, we had a significant brush fire with very hazardous conditions. This actually posed a potential life-safe risk to our firefighters, as well as that very, very expensive over $1 million pieces of equipment that we had. Also, there's 40 or more adjacent dwellings, and our drinking water infrastructure is already in this area. It's very important that we can enter and exit the park. It's a critical consideration. Lacking safe egress out of a dangerous situation puts our firefighters at risk of an engulfment situation. Trucks require circular routes because backing up is extremely difficult. And when we're talking about a time-sensitive engulfing situation, our firefighters then have to travel by foot outside of an area if they can't get the truck out. So I know council is very aware of what our project approval process is, but I thought I would briefly mention it for those watching or those here today. Projects can come through via council meetings, resolution directions, but projects also come to council via staff requests or staff reports. And also we bring them in our yearly budget. This project was a staff initiated project. During our budget process, staff brought forward a business case. This business case is reviewed at our senior management team. In discussions at our senior management team, because of our concerns for firefighter safety, it was asked to be put on the amended budget schedule. Senior management then puts forth spending packages at a very high level that goes to council. And at their amended budget meeting on November 29th of 2021, council approved this spending package. December 21 of 2021, we issued a press release that let folks know of the upcoming works in the wetlands. The next slide, this shows what council received as a spending package for this project. There's a few pieces that aren't on this slide. Those are related to how we fund it, where the money comes from, how much money it was, where we allocate those funds. But this is pretty much intact what council received. So with a lot of the work that we do, we receive lots of compliments and kudos. For the work that we did in the wetlands, we received a lot of compliments about there was greater accessibility for all levels and all abilities. We received compliments that the certain areas where we do with limestone allows better visibility. It assists with keeping people and dogs out of sensitive areas. Some folks, we do have quite a few very well-educated folks in our community. Some folks with a hydrological background were praising the connectivity that was showing positive results. Some folks said that they understand that when construction areas are going on, they're not pretty, but the natural vegetation will grow back. And they were happy to see the increased safe access. We received many compliments for this trail. Also, sometimes we receive concerns or complaints about the work that we do. And we take these concerns very seriously. We receive concerns about draining the wetlands, paving a roadway through the wetlands to have church access. How did we impact biodiversity? Putting trails. Are we putting trails before wildlife? Are we redirecting water flow? Are we causing any ecological impacts? Were species inventories completed? Did we do any pre-work studies or assessments done by a qualified environmental professional? As we have in our previous slide, we have a lot of education and a lot of experience in our community around these areas. We're grateful. Staff is grateful for the community coming forward, telling us the good things and telling us the things that they don't feel are so good. It allows us to collaborate with our stakeholder groups and have a better vested interest in our community. Usually when we receive complaints, it's usually because of a lack of understanding of our process or our project. So we first try to be open and transparent and provide all the particulars of a project to help folks understand what it is we're trying to accomplish. And this was our first step. This was one of those times where we developed a comprehensive report. It was given to council, it was provided to the public, and we also made sure that any person that we knew about who had concerns about this was addressed directly with this information. That did not quell concerns. We received many compliments about the report and how helpful it was to explain what was going on, but that did not quell the concerns. So at that point, senior staff stopped all finishing works. We had meetings. We discussed what was going on. We reviewed options and we came up with a plan. On March the 22nd, we engaged WSP, a qualified environmental experts in biology, hydrology, and ecosystem sciences. At that point in our first conversations, the hydrologist recommended we do no further works to ensure that anything that we were to do to remediate any of these concerns would not cause an issue. Once again, we followed up with all concerned parties that were known to us, that we had engaged WSP. We met with some of these folks on site to discuss concerns and to visually see what was causing the issues. We had WSP come with site visits and they've done review. We've met with the ministry and I've also discussed the situation with our MLA representatives. And then today we've got a report provided to council. And I just want to say that before this was made public, we did connect with every single known party who had concerns and let them know that this meeting was happening. We let them know where on the website that they could find the information that we were going to present today and that the report would be brought forward to council. So on March the 29th, the city was advised of a complaint that had been submitted to the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resources, and Rural Development about the works. On April 14th, myself, Blaine, the Director of Planning, and Kiva, our CAO, met with a compliance officer. Upon a very long discussion and clarification of actions that were taken, the history of the site, mapping information, and confirmation that the city had already engaged in a qualified environmental professional, we were not issued a violation or a fine. We received valuable advice about the city's obligation under the Water Sustainability Act. We were issued a warning that we need to ensure that we complete Section 11 paperwork for a change approval and that the terms and conditions were met. From that date, we continue to be in contact with the officer and their designated biologist. They've been extremely helpful and been working with us on a go-forward plan. The ministry required us to complete 4 things. 1, to engage in a QEP, which they were very happy that we already had. Second, they want us to review the QEP to review the drainage and the Wrens and Hurst area, to look at the berm's height and style, and to ensure natural water flow. And they wanted to make sure that our QEP reported on these considerations. At this point, I just want to state too, that no work is completed, no work will be completed until the ministry approves the plans that our qualified professionals will put forward. So the summary report that we received. So we first contacted WSP on March the 22nd and March the 23rd. We entered into an agreement for them to look at our ecological and hydrological conditions and to assess to any potential impacts to the natural drainage, the environment with the trail building, as well as identifying any potential regulatory requirements. One of the things that was highlighted in the report, I mean, the report's here, everybody can read it. I'm just going to go over some of the high points. One of the things that they mentioned was poor mapping and definitions of the wetlands. Even the ministry said that there's a very small area that was identified as wetlands on provincial and municipal maps right in here. And as you can see, now that we've had soil sampling, testing, LiDAR, you can see that the area of our wetlands is much larger than anybody anticipated. Even looking at our OCP, our Parks and Trails plans, we have multiple different variations of where the actual specific area of the wetlands is. Through LiDAR, hydrological field operations, and these soil pit sampling. When I was out with our experts, I asked them, how do we know that here is okay and here's not okay? And they were talking about wet forests, wetlands, marshes, swamps, transition areas. And how do we know which one are those, are each of those things, and how do we deal with them? And what they told me is that we have to have these soil pit sampling to be able to define those areas. We have to use LiDAR and other technologies for us to be able to define these areas. The wetlands presented at this point are a mosaic of swamp and marsh. There was a storm drain channel that existed predating this project. We had, and we showed the ministry photos from 2016 that showed that this did exist. Our staff did clear out that channel and expanded that channel. The channel at the northwest of the project connects to a side ditch. It varies in flow dramatically. We have been keeping track of that flow every single day. Trail construction materials show the water level on both sides are equal. The created berms have resulted in excavating soils that cover adjacent vegetation. They also pointed out that this wetland can tolerate changes in hydrology and disturbance, that the water flow is not blocked by the trail-based construction, but the tall raised trail and the berms are a potential barrier for movements for wildlife species and particular amphibians. So this is our recommendations from this report, that a remediation work plan is proposed and it will be completed by the city with the required aspects of the Water Sustainability Act. First and foremost, delineation and classification of wetlands. That's mapping, finding out where this area actually is and having it mapped scientifically. Having an alteration of the berms to reduce the height and the grade. Vegetative restoration plan, including native species. An application for a change approval under Section 11. Drainage to follow the natural terrain gradient, and that was within regards to the drainage channel. That things be put back to the natural gradient and not what it is with it cleaned out. Follow the requirements for reporting within our development permit area, monitoring our plan, and a creation of construction environmental management plan. Furthermore, the report gives us some other recommendations. And these recommendations look for us to the future, as well as preserving our ecological value of the wetlands. To do field measurements and mapping on the new trail alignment, including flow directions, ground elevation, and berm creation. We look at the hydrological features and paths within our project and learn about our seasonal flows and levels. Right now, we don't know what's good or what's bad in the wetlands. We don't know if it's healthy or not healthy. We don't know if the water level is higher or lower. We don't have any statistics that help us prove that the wetlands are in good health or in poor health. In spending time with WSP, we learned that there's lots of ways that we can help improve this. Spending time with our community groups, they've even offered ideas on how we can incorporate and gather this data. We need a consideration of the need for future culverts to ensure that we have small wildlife passage corridors. And then to have a look at our fish presence, if there is any, in the Carey Creek area. Both the ministry and WSP says this is a naturalized area. It's got huge potentials. And as we always do, we always try and go above and beyond what's recommended to even come up with even better things and more things. So in our staff review, we want to make sure that we're looking at our processes and procedures to make sure that everything that we do doesn't have gaps. We want to ensure that our natural assets are identified, inventoried, and follow management plans, no different than a facility or other infrastructure that we have. That we gather stats and data to ensure what the water flows in the wetlands should be, could be, and are at. We want species inventory completion of the wetlands areas and future improvement plans of our wetlands, including develop a complete management plan and look at invasive species remediation. Future projects to include budgets for environmental impact assessments. Those identified gaps, work on additional training for staff. And to renew our partnerships with community groups, government agencies, and stewardship groups. If one of the things that I've learned through this last few months is that we have a community full of untapped knowledge, energy, and a desire to participate. Working with our partner groups will allow us to utilize and learn and grow and be able to support the abundance of wonderful natural assets we have here. One of those partnership opportunities fell a little bit into my lap. In discussing our wetlands project with Mabry, they let me know that there's a workshop on a thing called OECMs. Truth be told, I don't know what OCMs even were at that point in time. And I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to learn something new, as well as to reach out to our groups in town to try and rebuild and reconnect those relationships. And what I learned is OECM stands for Other Affected Area-Based Conservation Measures. And in my uneducated but learning voice, it means those are special spaces that don't fall under permitted areas, that don't fall under other permit or protected areas. But they're things that we want to say, hey, this is a special space, and we need to have special rules around special spaces. So Mabry has recently signed a 2-year contribution agreement with the Environment and Climate Change Canada to support conservation, biodiversity, and identification and designation. So this identification leads to restoration and rehabilitation efforts to preserve biodiversity. We are in one of the most biodiverse areas, being in the Aerosmith region. It also includes education and outreach. It helps municipalities document what are best work windows and make sure that we're not impacting species at risks or have impacts to local concern. Mabry is seeking support from us as well as all the other in the biosphere region. So what is our involvement and what is the benefits? So they're asking for an 8-hour person time commitment per month for one person. They're asking for 8 hours of any person that we designate towards this service. And staff is also asking for us to support up to $5,000 of additional dollars of in-kind services. So if they need a backhoe, if they need a communication publication, if they need something that we can help provide them with, that will fall within the work that we do. What we get in return is we get expertise. We get species inventories. There's already outlined management plans for special spaces, and we get resources to help us. And staff are recommending that we use the OECM designation, and we looked towards if we can designate those for our wetlands as well as our Shelley Creek areas. We talked a lot about how fabulous Shelley Creek is as well. They're also another one that we would like to look at this. And if council supports this, I would like to bring forth some more information about this at another time. So funding options. So as we stopped all the work, we still have $53,000 remaining in the previous budget that was approved by council. Council already approved a $60,000 for us to do limestone completion in the lower part of the cold water completion area of the wetlands. We're asking for those to be redirected. Also, we found new funding that was just announced. It's called Local Government Climate Action Program funding, and we are to receive $127,000 every year for 3 years. And we also have the potential of DCCs and gas tax for future works. We did our DCCs for this one. So these works that we're talking about were already envisioned. The situation that we're in right now has advanced these timelines. This will help us work towards a positive outcome and move forward to enhance and protect this one special area. So staff's asking council to consider that you accept my report today, that a qualified environmental profession be retained to develop a comprehensive plan to complete the ministry and WSP and staff recommendations, that the monies remaining from our current works, as well as the $60,000 that we approved for other works in the wetlands, be redirected to the new trail and drainage area. That the local government climate action program funding be allocated to fund a wetlands management plan, and that council approves our staff involvement in the Mabry OECM project and provide a letter of support to them.
Are you done? For who? For me, I haven't said anything. Oh, okay. I'm not speaking loud enough, apparently. Has something to do with the tooth problem, but Councillor Patterson, I'm asking for questions now to the delegation. So Councillor Patterson, you had your hand up first. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. So although in our reports was the report to be received, the council consideration was attached in your report. So I guess my question is that you would like to have a motion put forward for the items that you've asked us to consider. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'll hold off on.
Please, because I'd like the questions first to the delegation and then to the staff, and then we'll make the motion when it's all finished off. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, through your worship. Question, Ms. Woods. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive report. The couple questions I have here, anyways, is like I remember when the trail was being proposed through the wetlands and so forth, but you had mentioned that this was, and then we approved it because it was a staff-initiated project, as you mentioned. But at that particular time, my question is how did a plan come up? How did the staff come up with a plan of where to locate the trails and what type the trails are? Because you said that there's no, that the City of Parksville has no trail specific standard for wetlands. And yet you were proposing a trail for it. And so I'm not sure why and how the trail was built as it was, which turns out to be probably not the best solution for trails through wetlands. And like why perhaps you didn't reach out to other areas that had wetland trails and maybe check their standard first? Is that something that could have happened?
So over many years, so from previous to 2017 to currently, there's multiple trails that's gone through there. I don't want to have a miscommunication that this trail is not correctly built. That's something that is still being reviewed. And the first report of WSP said that it does allow for the natural water flow and those pieces. Some of the questions you're asking is about staff, which I think we need to have in a private conversation that we can't.
Yeah, sorry if I maybe misphrased that. It's just like, where did the plan come from? Is because I would think that the plan, when you came to council, would have included at least a budget provision for WSP, which we've had previous experience with in the Springwood project, which they did fantastic, of course. Now, why did you not seek a WSP biological assessment of now the wetlands like you did in the Springwood? Like why was that step not taken?
So from the staff understanding, they were outside of the wetlands area. So there's actual delineated wetlands area on mapping that shows that there was a pocket within the entire park that is actual wetlands. We also have 2 watercourse protection areas. This trail was in between those 2 areas and below the pocket that showed on mapping that this was within the wetland specific area. Now, hindsight, we now know that, and because of the soil sampling and those things, we now know that the wetlands covers a much larger area than was previously mapped.
So also there was no consideration at the time to the Water Sustainability Act as well, that obviously have quite a bit of credence as to proper best practices, good practices in a wetlands area, big, smaller, whatever we identified.
Yeah, so being outside the parameters of that area and away as the distance that was supposed to be away from the 2 watercourse areas,
yes,
then that act wouldn't necessarily apply.
Okay, so it would appear that a lot of lessons have been learned since that time.
There has been a lot of lessons learned.
Right, because we received huge public outcry, as you mentioned anyways, and you did respond very well to them all, and I appreciate that as well. With sort of suggestions and questions and information, more information required and concern. And you did address that, and I thank you for that. That's very good. So it seems to be a learning process, but what you're asking for anyways, as Councillor Patterson has alluded to, is to go forward with going along with the remediations, if any, needed type of thing, with a proper environmental consultant.
Yes.
Like under contract type of thing to assist us in developing a plan to do it correctly.
And that's the $127,000. That is a new grant money that we've received to work on that plan and to use the money that we have left over from the previous works, as well as future works that we were asking for this year. So that was the 53,000 plus the 60,000 to actually work on the remediation.
Great, thank you for that. So I like it. It sounds great. It's going ahead in a really strong direction now, and I can see that, including the remediation done with the environmental experts. But the thing is that, is there anything that should be done right away? Like I think of right away, the drainage trench that was put to the storm drain on Wren's Road. Does WSP suggest that you sandbag it, you cover it in, or is there anything that we should do? Because I know we got to go through all the hoops and so forth. I know the process, and it's going to take a while to get it fixed up. Is there anything that we have identified that should be fixed right away so it's not drained or it's not damaged in any way?
So originally we did sandbag, and we originally put in a step process to slow. And there's days where there's a trickle of water, and there's days where there's a larger volume of water. On advice from a hydrologist that we've been working with through WSP, they advised us not to do any remediation at this point until we have the full plan on what we need to do. Now, that is our first priority in the plan. So the first priority is the drainage area. The second priority, of course, is the berms, and then the natural water flow. So that will be the first priority to make sure that that area is addressed. In keeping with, we have to get ministry approval, and we also have to make sure that we supply all the paperwork and those things that have to happen as well.
All the permits and everything required.
Correct.
Right.
And at this point, we have, we're looking at our well system in that area, and our wells have been artesianing, which is something they haven't done. So they are recovering quite well at this moment in time. But yes, that's priority one on our remediation.
Thank you
pathway.
for that. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations 1 and 2. Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're going to bring up the other part of that. Do we need to bring that up now?
I'm sorry, could I ask for clarification? So you said recommendations 1 and 2?
That's what I have on mine is recommendations 1 and 2.
I have 1, 2, 3. There's 5 different recommendations, Your Worship. Yeah, so I believe the request was to receive my report, and then if you can consider my requests or our requests for the other 4, and then somebody would need to make a motion for those.
Where's number 4? Does somebody have it? This one here?
Yeah.
All right. You're going to move those? That's fair enough. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Patterson. Discussion on those 4? I'll call the question. All those, oh, sorry, did you have a question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Worship. The local government climate action program funding and the climate change strategy of the 127,082, it's going to be allocated to fund the wetlands management plan. Now, in some ways, it doesn't pertain directly to the Parksville wetlands, but was every municipality given part of this, or was this a grant application that we applied for?
So it was, through Your Worship, if I may.
Thank you.
It was not a grant application. This was something that was provided to us through the Ministry of, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, just to clarify, this is replacing the CAREP, we used to submit things that we do to mitigate GHG every year, and we used to get about $9,000 for that. But I think we had discussed at council that ended this year, and so instead of that, they've actually just granted, it's based on our population size, this amount, but we do have to obviously have something eligible, like something that would contribute to climate change mitigation, which wetlands do. They retain a lot of GHG carbon sequestration, and we have to report out on it every year, but it is guaranteed that we get that for the next 3 years to replace that smaller amount of funding that we got for climate change strategies.
Just a small increase from 9,000 to 127,000. Gosh, I wish I had a pay raise like that.
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to call 5-minute recess if we could. 8:20.
Just for those 3 more meetings.
we're ready to go for the rest of this. Mr. Russell, please.
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship and Council, for your consideration this evening is the issuance of a development permit for the construction of an industrial building, associated landscaping and parking at the property at 1156 Franklin Gull Road down in the industrial park. If approved, this will facilitate 1,524 square meter multi-tenant industrial building with 5 units, open mezzanine, flat roof, garages, etc. The building was designed by Pudora Architecture, Inc. Landscaping was designed by KD Planning and Design, as well as a groundwater protection report was prepared by Geopacific Consultants. The review of the proposal is complete. There does not appear to be any technical aspects that would preclude consideration of issuance. The recommendations are per the agenda to receive the report and to consider issuing the development permit.
All right, I need a mover and a seconder for 2 recommendations, just me. Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, keep going.
If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration this evening is a request to proceed with notice for a development variance permit to facilitate the conversion of an existing accessory building into an accessory carriage house. The subject property is at 178 Skylark Avenue. There's a different setback in our zoning bylaw for a standard accessory building versus a building that will be used as a secondary residence. And it is for this reason that a variance is necessary. The further details are provided in the report. The recommendation on the agenda is to receive the report and to proceed with public notice.
Thank you. I need mover for both recommendations. Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell.
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship, this is a follow-up report as part of provincial requirements for liquor licensing. The local governments may provide comment to the liquor cannabis regulatory branch. Sorry, I struggle with their new name. So public notice has gone out. There was 2 newspaper ads published as well as signage placed on the property. In response to that, we received some correspondence. I'm just trying to find it here. So we received 4 pieces of correspondence in opposition to the application, and those correspondence represented the opinions of 11 persons. Those correspondence are attached to the agenda for council consideration. If there may be people in the gallery that may be here to speak to this, I don't know.
Do we have anybody? I don't see anybody.
Okay. If not, then council can receive the correspondence that we have received up until the receipt deadline. The recommendations are to receive the report, and after council having considered public comment, that council pass a resolution based on one of the 3 provided options presented. So the 3 options are to indicate no opposition to the application as proposed. Another option is as a partial support, which proposes up to 30 seats along the next adjacent to the boulevard. And then the 3rd recommendation is denial.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder. We can do these together, I suppose, if we would like. Somebody should decide on what option they want to do. Sure, we can. Sure. Yep. All right. And I'll take the recommendation number 1. I need a mover and a seconder for Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Thank you, Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Opposed? Did you want to speak to it? I should have asked that, shouldn't I? I didn't think that was the one you were after. All right. And number 2, then, the council having considered public comment pass a resolution based on option 1, 2, or 3. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Worship. At this time, I'd like to move to approve option 2, partial objection to the application based on considerations as provided in Schedule B.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Counselor Wilson, you're seconding that? Discussion? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I just want to, out of consideration for the correspondence we've received regarding this application, I feel that option 2 provides the best solution to this problem. The addition, option 2, of course, does not provide for the additional deck as requested. Because in my mind and with after visiting the site and after looking at the residents' comments and so forth, there's already severe parking issues around that place. The Aerosmith Brewery is somewhat a victim of its own success, and unfortunately, their location is just does not really seem to satisfy the requirements for off-street parking. So that is why I'm moving for option 2.
Any other comments? Counselor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree. Counselor O'Brien said exactly what I was thinking about as well. And I believe that in one of the letters, they were well-written letters, by the way, very fair to the brewery, but I think the comment was made that they've outgrown the site. And so as much as it's really nice having it there, I think there might be some merit in that. So I think option 2 right now gives them the option to go ahead, but give consideration to future planning.
Anybody else? Yeah, I'm going to speak to it. I'm going to be voting against the recommendation for option 2. I believe that this has been operating like this for 2 years. That there's absolutely no change to the number of seats that are being provided. There's no change to anything that's going on, and it's functioned for the last 2 years. I don't see any reason why we would want to change that. They've done a good job, and yes, they are successful, and yes, the parking lot is full, but I think that's what every retailer wants, is to have a full parking lot. And in this case, I think they've done a really good job on it. And so I'm going to vote against this. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just want to point out that it is not exactly as it's been for 2 years. The option 2 allows for exactly that, is all the existing facilities that are there now, including the tables up by the fence, as well as the tables against the building. The proponent has asked for an extension of and an addition of seats, of which I will ask Mr. Russell on how much the addition was going to be over and above what's existing right now.
Explain, Director Russell.
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor O'Brien. It's slightly hard for me to answer that, and I'm going to try my best to explain why. There's an area adjacent to the boulevard that has approximately about 24 to 26 seats on it. There's an AstroTurf area that's been sort of rolled out on occasion on the parking area. I have no indication how many seats have been on that AstroTurf area under the tent. It was not through any approval through the local government. So there's no indication that I've been able observed showing the number of seats that they've had on the AstroTurf area under the tent. From the air photos, you can certainly see the tables. The air photos are included in the agenda. You can certainly see the tables that are included along the boulevard. But from those photographs, I've not been able to determine how many seats are on that AstroTurf area.
Thank you, but for clarification, the proponent has offered drawings anyways of a new proposed deck area that is went right to the application said on the front of the application for the extra seats. It said the number of seats that was going to be added to it. Yeah, in the addition, which would be option 1, would it not? Yeah, option 1. Yeah, which showed it. So all that I'm saying is that option 2 provides for exactly what's there right now to continue only under permanent status, but no additional building to add this new deck area that was not there for the last 2 years. So I'm saying status quo is okay. And from what the neighbors were saying, they were okay with their status quo they're putting up with. But the thing is that they were not in favor of having additional seats provided at that time in future, moving forward.
Director Russell, I'm counting on you to sort this out, because my understanding is that the application is for 66 seats in the outdoors, which is exactly what's there right now. They're not applying for any additional seating.
If I may, Your Worship, it is my understanding that they're applying for 66 seats in the outdoors. Part of that area is currently part of that area appears an area to be similar in area to the deck that's being proposed. I do not know the number of seats that they've had sites located on the AstroTurf.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Patterson, I'll get to you in just a second. I just want to be clear so I understand what I'm going to be voting for, and then we can do this. My understanding in talking to the owners of the restaurant that they wanted to have approval for 66 seats, which is the 66 seats that they currently have. They also have 20 seats on the inside, which is what they're using. So it works out to be 87 seats or 88 seats or whatever it comes to as a total there, which is their request is not changing anything at this point in time. That's why I'm in favor of option 1. And unless I'm reading this incorrectly, unless I'm not understanding it, there is a difference, and I understand the difference because of the capacity load is 87 seats, and that's where they come up with the number, but that's based on the square footage of the whole premises, if I'm not mistaken, not on seats.
Maybe I can rephrase it, and this is in the report. So the report notes that this is to make permanent seating that has been temporarily located on the property.
That's what I am after. I agree.
That's what they've applied for, to make permanent seating that is being allowed on the property under temporary authorization. That would include seating along the boulevard as well as the AstroTurf area under the tent that occupies like 3 or 4 parking spaces on the property currently.
Okay, Councillor Chandler and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, knowing this property, I think I'm assuming the goal is to get rid of the tent and the AstroTurf and make it a permanent structure, as you mentioned, Director Russell. The one thing that I'd like to mention is that as far as the parking and some of the other things go, fortunately, the hours that this operation runs means that it really sort of has its busiest times when all the other businesses within the plaza are closed. So there is quite a bit of parking that frees up there. The only one that is not closed at that time, the dance studio where people are coming in and dropping kids off, and the gym that I go to there at Ironworks. And between those 2 properties, there is a bit of traffic sitting, but otherwise there's a pretty empty parking lot there. So I don't really envision this obviously changing the way things are, because we're talking about the same amount of seats, but I just wanted to point that out. And the other thing too is, you know, most of their evening hours, they're closed at 8 o'clock at night, and a couple of nights a week, they're open at 10. So we're not talking about, large noise levels for all parts of the evening and well into the midnight hour or anything like that. So I think their hours are quite reasonable, and that's why I would support number 1, and I would vote against number 2.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think we're, some of us may have been confused, and everything was on page 90, where they currently have seating for 62 and occupancy for 66 people. That's including staff. And depending on how the patio addition is ultimately constructed, because at this point in time, it's just going through the Liquor and Cannabis Association, that the occupant load of the facility, including the patios, is proposed to increase from 81 persons to 147 persons. And I think that if people were reading that, and that's where we were getting some of the concern from residents in the area, is that it is an increase, and we are only increasing in Parksville. And I do expect that it will be busy in that community area. And they've had great success. I fully expect that they will outgrow this location in the next 5 years, and most likely have a larger location or a secondary location. So that's where my thought process and everything has gone from, is that yes, it does seem to be a bit of a sharper bank, but you also have to realize that we just got hot overnight. So our patio aren't always in season all year round. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm still confused. Hang on. I'm very confused still. Hold on. So where was the 30 people on option 2, Blaine? Can you explain that? And why is it I think that option 1, they're expanding and they're building? Well, okay, so I'm wrong on that.
Well, they're expanding this is where it's confusing. And the confusion comes from the way the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch categorizes things. So their permanent license number is increasing because on their permanent license, they don't have those 66 seats on their license, but they physically have outdoor patio space on the ground that's operated since the COVID protocols came into place. So that's where the confusion is coming from. So the deck they're proposing is both along the boulevard area, and then part of it will go across the parking area, kind of where that AstroTurf and tent has been located. So that's what they're asking for, to make permanent those temporary things on the property, although they will be physically improving them, like they're going to physically turn it into a deck, so it won't be like AstroTurf in a tent.
Okay, so, but they're still going to actually put a physical structure on the 3 parking spaces.
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, that's what their plans show.
Can you explain option 2 then?
So option 2 was an option that staff prepared in case council wanted to have another option.
What is that option?
So option 2 would be to recognize the existing fenced-in corral along the boulevard and to make that a part of the permanent licensed area, but not the AstroTurf or the tent or a future deck in that area. Does that help clarify?
Councillor Frass.
Actually, I'd like to, like what their kind of comments going, if I can just defer to them for now, and I'll take it after.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So now I get it. So the applicant or the neighbors that have sent in letters were referring to the fact of a loss of 2 existing parking spots. So the loss of the 2 existing parking spots is where they have that canopy with the AstroTurf there. So they're saying that those are going to be permanently lost as parking spots. So that's part of the concern why the residents in the area fear more parking is going to overflow. But what that does as well is it's because it is somewhat of a temporary, well, it's AstroTurf and a tent. So they're asking for a permanent one, and which I have here, which is actually showing a deck, which is going to include seating for more patrons that I would suggest at this point than what is exactly on the AstroTurf and turf area, because there's a separation. I know there's a separation because I've been there, because I've enjoyed a beer or two. So the thing is that this area, as proposed by the drawing, is going to add more seating capacity than what the existing tent and AstroTurf does right now. So my point is I would certainly approve option 2 of you as suggested, because it does formalize and permanent approval for the existing along the fence along Stanford Avenue. It's going to do that, but at the same time, not allowing for losing 2 parking spots permanently by putting a deck has extra seating on it. That's the difference.
Councilor Fraz.
Thank you. Through his worship to council. I like that a business like this has been so successful that they're needing to expand. And I know that driving by that area, it's been a very popular place. They got a beautiful view. They have great products they put out. So I'm not surprised to see their success. Can't ignore though when we ask for public input and people bring forward concerns. And one of them to me that seems to stand out is that there's no parking signs on Stanford. Is that correct? Blaine? Yes. So there's no parking signs there, but their patrons are still parking in those spots and causing this kind of issue. The parking spots where the AstroTurf is, those parking spots are already gone. They've been covered up and not being used as it stands. This isn't like they would be, it'd be a permanent loss versus this temporary loss they have. But to me right now, it's the fact that with their seating as it's been, if they're not able to manage the parking issues that they have right now, I don't think increasing it beyond is going to give any benefit in that regard. It's just going to aggravate the residents more. And maybe it sounds like they've been holding on because it's temporary use. They were tolerating it through COVID, but it doesn't seem like that's something that they would support to be a long-term patio and long-term result, especially since there's been nothing addressed as far as what they will do with the parking. I know there is a big parking lot there as it is. Maybe it's not being utilized to its extent, but based on the feedback that we've gotten and the situation has been, I think that option 2 is a fair compromise at this time. I don't know if, maybe it's a question for Blaine though, if they were to get the option 2 passed through the BC Liquor and Cannabis, could they ever apply again for an expansion, like in a year from now, or what's the kind of timeline or process if they want to reapply to expand that?
If I may worship through to Councilor Fraz, they could apply at any time.
Okay. So with that in mind too, it would support the fact that I think option 2 is the way to go for the time being. And if they were to show that they could manage that and be good neighbors there, then I would perhaps support it down the line with more feedback from the community saying that there hasn't been a concern. But as is right now, that parking concern, the noise concern, is a big residential area up there. I think the option 2 as presented is the way to go.
I'm going to try this one more time. Part of the concern here is the crazy way that this government is classifying this. First off, they're talking about 147 capacity load. That doesn't mean seats. That doesn't mean anything. It just, they take the number of square feet from bare wall to bare wall to bare wall to bare wall, and they divide that and they come up with they divide it with a number and they come up with a capacity load, sorry, of 147. It has nothing to do with reality. It has nothing to do with anything. Currently, and what they have said and what they've indicated in there, that they have no intent on increasing the number of seats that are currently there. The grand total of whatever the number is, 87 seats, whatever, 20 plus 67, 80 some odd seats on this. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, it's been operating this way for 2 years. Councillor Chandler has indicated very well that this is all happening after the rest of that plaza is closed. It has copious parking spots all through that plaza. I've gone there. I go there at least once a week, if not twice, to have a beer. And I have never had a problem finding a parking spot. I may have to look a little bit, right on the front line, but the reality is that this works, and the rest of the places are closed except for the dance studio. I don't see why we're nickeling and diming this to death. We've got a business that is successful. We've got one that is not looking to expand, is only looking to hold on to what they have and continue to go forward. They're looking for exactly what they have. Nothing more, nothing less. And in my mind, option one is the only way to be fair to these people for doing a good job. Councillor O'Brien, then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And regardless of the liquor and cannabis licensing branch, the crux of the whole issue here is the response from the public that actually live in that area. The public in that area have said that they feel that they're being inconvenienced. And I agree with Councillor Frass's assessment that they were hoping and putting up with the fact that this was a temporary situation. And they understood with COVID, like temporary solutions were passed because we were trying to ensure the survival of the businesses. And the residents themselves said that they were fully on board with that. They get it. But the thing is that now the fact that they're going permanent and increasing the parking problems that are going to go on in that area, they have said that they are affected by. They're telling us that perhaps you have not been affected on the hours that you've gone, but the residents have said in their letters to us, the correspondence that is registered here, that they are inconvenienced by it, and they feel that they'll be inconvenienced by more. It's really not a great location for this because of their own success. And really the thing is that they could come, as Councillor Frass says, at a later date to maybe propose it again, but that would probably have to come with a total parking solution proposal with it, which would be welcomed, I think, by the residents. And at that time, then they could have to say at that time. But as it is right now, whether I'm inconvenienced and I can get a parking spot there or not, whatever time I want to go have a beer, is got nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with the people that live in the area that are affected by it.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to clarify for you. When it talks about occupancy load, that's the load that it can take, 147 people.
It's capacity load.
Occupancy load. It says that is what it is. And so right now it's 81. It can, so it's to increase from 81 to 147. So right now, maybe they have seating for 62, but the occupancy load can take 81. When they put this through, the occupancy load will go up to 147 potential.
The capacity load there, Councillor Wilson, has been 147 since they approved it. It was 100 and I can't remember the initial numbers, and then it was moved to 147 a few years ago. And it's been 147 ever since. It's always been at 147.
It says right here, the occupant load of the facility is proposed to increase from 81 persons to 147.
No, that's not true.
Well, it's saying it right here.
Anyways.
So it is going to increase. It has the ability to increase. And that covered patio is to seat more people. So I'm sorry, I think that option 2 is the fair way to go right now.
Okay. If there's no other points, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Option 2. Opposed? It carries. These poor people have been sitting here from BC Housing since the beginning. So, Mr. Russell, please.
Certainly. If I may, Worship and Council, for consideration this evening, is an introduction report for a temporary use permit at the subject property at 414 Island Highway West, the VIP Motel. In order to allow the operation of a supportive housing facility on the subject property for a limited period of time, not in contravention of City of Parksville zoning and development bylaw 1994, number 2000, a temporary use permit is required. The OCP for the property is designated as mixed use tourist commercial. This designation does allow for consideration of temporary use permits. At this point, we're seeking council receipt of the report. A draft temporary use permit is enclosed with terms and conditions. In order for us to proceed with notice, we need to have that attached at an upcoming public meeting. Should council authorize us to give notice, there would be an opportunity for people to send correspondence in or appear in person to speak to the application. The recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for a revised recommendation, which includes a recommendation to schedule a public meeting. I would like to add a point 3 that would say that the public hearing for temporary use permit number 22 TUP 001 be held on Monday, July 18th, 2022, starting at 6 p.m. at the Parksville Civic and Technology Center located at 100 Jensen Avenue, East Parksville, with staff directed to provide the required notice. So I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? Councillor Frass?
I'll let the mover speak first.
I didn't see your hand up. Sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this moves it, this temporary use permit forward. And I'm pleased that you added a public hearing recommendation to point 4 to the recommendation. I really do feel that our public needs to be aware, and as Councillor Fraz had on his last point with the delegation forward, have a community advisory committee. Thank you. It's getting late. So I really do feel strongly with that. I live 2 blocks away, just off of Moliette. So, and I know some of my neighbors have some concerns and some questions, obviously, as I get them from them. So this application then goes to the RCMP detachment and the fire department and the city bylaw compliance, and that for comment as well. So this is one step moving forward. And as I said earlier, I'm hoping that we can have a better form of communication moving forward. So that is why I've moved this recommendations going forward to the next step.
Thank you. Councillor Fraz, Councillor Bryan, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through his worship to council. Part of it, for me, important aspect is getting public feedback. I think we've always looked to have the public provide some input when we are discussing things here. But one of the concerns I have is the extent of the zone that will be canvassed for input. Could I get clarification as to how far that would be?
Certainly, by my worship through Councillor Fraz. So there will be 2 notices published in the Parksville Qualicum News. So that would go to everyone in the community, as well as there per our normal notification requirements, just like a permanent change in zoning, notice would be provided within 50 meters of the subject property.
Is it possible to ask for that 50 meters to be extended to perhaps 4 times that amount? And the reason being is this property is owned by a group who owns the neighboring property on either sides of them. So at 50 meters, I think it really limits the amount of residents in the community who's actually going to be approach that. And I think it's deserving considering that central location, that it goes out to quite a larger area. Is that possible to extend that area?
If I may, through to Councillor Fraz, I don't believe it would be because we have a procedures bylaw that spells out the distance that we do notification to. So as a matter of procedural fairness, I don't believe we would be able to do that
Okay.
without a bylaw amendment occurring first.
All right, well, at least I could ask though, because it's one of the concerns I have though, and I'll keep in mind when we do get feedback from it if this does advance. On top of that though, I just want to say for me, the trust isn't quite there as far as the relationship that we have with BC Housing, particularly that we only found out about this through reading it from the newspaper when it started off. It wasn't something that was approached to us. I appreciate having a delegation today and the chance to ask some questions, but along the way too, I felt like the communication was shifting as to what it's called, what it's about. I don't know if a temporary use permit is just going to be exercised as a permanent use permit, considering that they're going to seem to operate regardless. So for me, the trust is kind of broken, and but I do think it's important to get public feedback and provide them for input. So I look forward to the next step of it. I'm going to support the motion that was moved here today. And yeah, just want to let you know where my mind's at with it. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not support this motion as revised. I'd like to recognize or suggest to council that remember that this is a temporary use permit. You're asking now for a public hearing on a temporary use permit. We did lots of temporary use revisions and so forth over COVID. We didn't go to public hearing because it was the right thing to do. For other things, just like the brewery. But the thing is that in this particular case, this is just a temporary use permit. And Councillor Fraz has indicated that the trust isn't there yet. And yet I heard today from the delegation that they're very prepared to apply for this permit with the knowledge that it would expire March 31st, 2023, as the delegation's own words. So therefore, it has an end date. We also got an indication that they are seeking other solutions other than this site. I also heard that today. I also heard that due to Councillor Fraz's question, very good one, there would be a community neighborhood council set up at the Ocean Place. So that confidence was instilled again. So I believe that BC Housing are trying to alleviate any concerns that maybe have by the neighborhood. And fourth and final is, even if we do a public hearing where we get full public consensus on this, and if there's negative comments about it, that they don't want us to approve a temporary use permit, I'm certainly not going to be in favor of taking these people and turfing them out on the streets at all. The thing is, because I know that it's going to expire March 31st, 2023. And I believe that the neighborhood could actually go along with that if they knew that information. But the thing is that it's really, as it is right now, staff would be directed with the original motion recommendation as was here, the staff be directed to provide the required notice of council's intent to consider issuance. So that allows the public to weigh in on it with whatever letters that they have of support or non-support of our decision. So I don't think that this is necessary for a temporary use permit that we see an end date, which isn't that far away, quite honestly, folks. So I will not support this.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm going down a different road altogether. I feel that BC Housing renewed the lease with the VIP owners for another year this March, knowing that they were not in compliance, and yet they still went ahead and renewed a lease. Even though the city was waiting for them to submit documents, they delayed them for 6 months. In my opinion, BC Housing has not acted in good faith. They have abrogated their responsibility to find a cold weather shelter for Oceanside since 2019. and in the documents that are included for a lease or with the city, it says that that would be a condition that must be adhered to. But if we haven't seen anything since 2019, I don't trust them. The PQBTA is opposed to the VIP use as supportive housing. The businesses they have told me there are problems and they are not supportive of this. And I have to say, I think it's a little bit deceitful to the hardworking citizens of Parksville that these organizations secretly worked with BC Housing to implement a plan to put another supportive housing in Parksville without the knowledge of the voters and the city and the council. And so I feel that this is inappropriate housing model anywhere, let alone in a small community of 13,600 people whose rely on tourism. So I cannot vote for this top. I'm sorry, I think BC Housing has to step up to the plate and find accommodation because they're trying to put this back on the council and it is not really, it's them. They have had lots of time, so.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Worship. Much like Councillor Patterson, I'd like to see this move forward just in a sense to be able to deal with the stakeholders and a lot of the different people in the area just as well. I agree with Councillor Fraz. I'd like to see that area expanded. I'd also like to see something similar to what happened with Orca, where there was some literature sent out to a lot of different places so people knew what was going on. I do agree with Councillor with Marilyn. I do agree there with Councillor Wilson that we have a bit of a sore spot with this whole situation, and but I think there's not an opportunity for us to be throwing people out in the street here. We need to work with the situation at hand right now, but with the full knowledge that there should be some work towards putting these locations into another community. We cannot be the hub here. So it's not appropriate for one of us small towns here to just be dealing with all of the situations here. There's homeless people all from Bowser all the way through to Whiskey Creek, Arrington, all of the different areas that we deal with. I think we need to look at more pocketed locations in different regions. So I will still support it moving forward to the next level, but with some trepidation for sure.
Thank you. I'll speak to this at this point in time, although I'm attempting to maintain an open mind on this matter. I have grave concerns on how BC Housing attempted to go forward, knowing they were not in compliance with our bylaw initially, knowing it would have had significant effect on the economic well-being of our tourist industry. They also knew that the vast majority of our residents of Parksville were not in favor. They did it in a clandestine and illegal manner without any concern about the effect this would have on those poor people and how they would be put into that position. Knowing full well that it was not compliant with our bylaws. Quite honestly, I find how they handled this matter despicable and dishonest, and they thumb their nose at the citizens of the city of Parksville. Having said all this, I think we as a council must rise above this behavior. We must do this in accordance with the law and explain how that works later to BC Housing. We need to take all points of view into consideration in order to do that. And before we make a decision, I will support us approving the next step and provide council's notice of intent to consider the issuance of this TUP and have a public hearing which will provide the opportunity for the public to express their opinions. After all, we just had a discussion 5 minutes ago about 11 people expressing their opinions about a bar. And here we are saying we don't want to hear what the other people have to say. The public needs to say what they need to say on this. So I would have to tell you that I have considerable concerns on a TUP for 2 years and not with the with the BC Housing's record of complying. As far as what do we do when the expire, it ran out in March 31st of this year past. They just kept right on running. It runs out right now. They don't have anything and they're still keep on running. And next March, I'll guarantee you, if they don't have a spot, they'll just keep right on running the way they are now. So in my mind, we have to send the message that we do not agree with it, and then we will do what we have to do to solve the problem. But we can't just say, well, we're going to put our head in the sand because we haven't got a solution for them to comply with the law. It is their job to comply with the law, and they need to be doing that right now. So in my mind, let us go forward and have a public consultation on this, and then we can make a decision with an open mind. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let's not forget about the fact that the VIP has been operating for some time now. And we have all commented, even as council, that with very little or none difficulties processed by the RCMP, by our bylaw enforcement. We've asked specifically if there is a problem issues. And we were also advised today of the demographics that over half of them are over 55. So they're not causing an inconvenience in this area. And so the thing is that it's been proven, and we know that. But the thing is that can we not just look at the fact with a little bit of compassion here and saying, really, these people are, the process, I agree, the process could have been way better. Let's move on and let's get these people on the way to recovery the best we can. And it's going to take a little bit longer, but if we have to wait until March, then I'm prepared to do that. But we really haven't been inundated with letters from neighbors saying, this is the worst situation ever. I don't recall receiving one.
Councillor Frass.
Thank you, through his worship, to Councillor O'Brien. Just in response to that, you're correct. We haven't received a lot of letters, but at the same time, it's not always through letters that people approach us. Today alone, with this issue being on the agenda, I had half a dozen people speak to me and object to it. So I want to have the public an opportunity to be able to speak up and where they're heard for the entire council. I don't think it's fair that you just have these casual conversations in the street and they share their concerns. I think that a lot of the residents in the neighborhood have concerns. I think it's reasons why things like security is brought in at the time. There's perhaps a lot more that we don't hear about. We only hear bits and pieces. So I agree with you. There's times when I've driven by and forgot what's happening in the building. I've visited there myself, been invited to visit. I've stopped in numerous times through the Christmas holidays, even the springtime. I just think we need to be able to afford everybody the opportunity to speak up to it, because they don't always write in through emails. And I get it too. A lot of times people feel like their voice isn't heard. They don't have the opportunity to, or they don't want to speak up because they feel like they're going to get mobbed and people jump on them, because you see what happens in the world if someone has a polarizing view. And so there's a lot of people that just kind of keep quiet, but I don't think that should be shown as a sign of support. So it's why I say, like, I'll support this going to a public consultation process so we can give them that opportunity here, and then we can make a decision from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, then I'll finish it off.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to address Councillor O'Brien. I have heard directly from tourism, all the businesses there. They have had problems, I'm sorry to say, and some of their hotel guests have actually told them that they're alarmed and frightened walking around. So I know for a fact that they do have problems, and maybe you don't see it. And this isn't about throwing people out, but I do think that responsibility really lies with BC Housing for delaying so long. They've known this is coming, and I'm sorry to say that they're putting it on council to make us look bad, like we're throwing people out in the street, which is what they were counting on all along, in my opinion. But it is important that you know that businesses have problems.
Thank you. First off, this is not to say that we're against this, that we're going to turn it down. This is simply to say that we're going to the next step to listen to what the public has to say. After all, Councillor O'Brien, you were elected on the fact that you were totally against Orca Place because the public wasn't being listened to. We need to be listening to the public now, just like they should have been listened to back 4 years ago. So in my mind, we're not doing anything wrong. We're telling the people, come and tell us what you think. If you think it's a good idea, then tell us it's a good idea. If you think it's a bad idea, tell it's a bad idea. But how can we make a fair and wise deliberation on this if in fact we haven't heard from the people that are involved? That's what this is about, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we were supposed to do 4 years ago, and it wasn't done. That's in the public spoke very loudly when that happened. So in my mind, let's bring the public in. Let's listen to them. If they agree to it, fine. If they disagree, fine. If we can't make a decision on that, then we'll take all the other facts and we'll make a decision, a learned decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I take one great exception to the fact that you say, Councillor O'Brien, you were elected on the issue of campaigning against Orca Place 222. You said that was the issue. I like to think that I was elected for the fact that I was listening to the people, not campaigning against Orca 222. So that is an incorrect statement you have made.
Your Worship,
Yes.
would you entertain at this time splitting each of the points out?
We can do that.
Thank you.
Certainly. So recommendations number 1 is the first one up, that the report by the Director of the Community and Planning be received. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 2, that staff be directed to refer the application to the Oceanside RCMP Detachment Parksville Volunteer Fire Department in the City of Parksville Bylaw Compliance Department for comment. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Number 3, that the public hearing for temporary use permit number 22 TUP 001 be held on Monday, July the 18th, 2022, starting at 6 p.m. At the Parksville Civic and Technology Center located at 100 Jensen Avenue East, Parksville, BC, with staff directed to provide the required notice. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Chandler is moving it. Councillor Fraz is seconding it. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion fails. Fine, we don't ask the people.
Your Worship, there's also that staff be directed to provide the required notice of council's intent to consider issuance of the temporary use permit.
I don't have
Did
that.
you include that in your motion?
If I may, Your Worship, that was lumped together in those 2 motions, and we will need, from a statutory purpose, we have to provide notice if this is
Yes.
moving forward. So the way the motion was just read, that was basically doing both, the public meeting and the notice.
Yep.
So we will need some further direction from council on the statutory requirements.
I'm open for your suggestions.
So Your Worship, if we could just reestablish point 3, that staff be directed to provide the required notice of council's intent to consider issuance of temporary use permit number 22-2 TUP 001 to the owner of 414 Island Highway West to facilitate a non-permanent supportive housing facility.
Need a seconder? Councillor O'Brien, discussion? Let me just be clear on this. Does this mean that it's approved then? It still has to go through the normal process.
So just for clarity for myself and maybe for us to council or those watching concern, my understanding is this is just going to provide notice, as you mentioned, through the newspaper ads, through the 50-meter canvassing, but it's not going to be about a public hearing. It will just be
No.
open for input of letters, phone calls, so on. We're still provided for the input, but it's not a public hearing process.
If I may worship through to Councillor Fraz, that's correct. It's more like a development variance permit process.
All right.
No
So I'll just make a
discussion?
comment that this, I still support to get some feedback. I think it's a scaled down version of what we just turned down before, which I think is unfortunate because I think the more fulsome, the better, particularly because this is, again, it's only going to canvas for 50 meters, which is not including very many residents in that area. That's not going to hit any residents across the street, which neighborhoods are affected by it. It's not going to get up to the end of the road of Molliet there. And then the neighboring properties are owned by the same owner. So I think it's a very weak public consultation process. I would hope that out of good faith, if BC Housing was wanting to show their good faith to us, that they would extend that much beyond. I think there's an opportunity for them to go above and beyond here, which is what I would appreciate.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Mark, I can't see how you're voting. I'm sorry. Did you vote in favor or opposed? That doesn't help. Which one did you vote for? In favor or opposed?
Sorry, Your Worship, opposed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it was tied, so it's defeated again. We do have to provide direction.
Yeah.
Been trying to. I'm open for suggestions. Who wants to make a motion on this? You can't just leave it hanging there. You can't. It's by law. You have to provide the statutory notifications one way or another.
Your Worship, could
Yes.
I ask a question of Mr. Russell? Councillor Frass suggested that we expand, as per number 3, that we expand the area to a broader range under your required notice of council's intent to, could we make that happen?
If
Yes.
I may, Your Worship, it's council's notification distance established in council's bylaw. So council would need to amend that bylaw.
Oh, okay.
And
No, I get it. Okay, thanks. I was just trying to come up with a compromise.
I'm open here for suggestions. Go ahead.
If this isn't being advanced through public consultation, does that not kill the temporary use permit application? Is that not the same as denial? It's not proceeding, it's not.
Well, there is direction to refer it to the Oceanside RCMP, the fire department and the bylaw compliance department, so it's not canceled. And the better practice would be for council to actually make a decision as opposed to just not following the correct statutory process. So technically, I guess council could just leave this one until a later meeting, but the statutory process has to be followed at some point or it has to be denied. It doesn't really give proper direction to just not provide the support for the proper legal process.
Everybody want Councilor Russell or Director Russell? Sorry,
yeah, not yet.
you can have the job. Trust me.
If I may add to Your Worship, add to what Kiva said, my instructions would be to proceed with notice to those departments so notified, and then basically a follow-up report would come back where council would have to still at some point make a decision whether or not to advance it to public consultation or deny the application. So that decision still ultimately has to be made at some point, whether to advance it to public notice or deny the application. But at this point, based on what's passed thus far, my instructions be to consult with those 3 agencies and report back to you.
That's fine. Thank you. All right. Last time, then we're just going to leave it sit until we get back the report on the 3 agencies. Councilor Patterson? Pardon me?
Just asking, what's the option from here? If it's not this one, if it's not a public hearing, what's the option?
There isn't one. That's the whole
Put
point.
forward one.
But we just turned them both down. So now try again.
So reword it and retry again, because you guys need to move forward.
In this, if I may, your worship, in this particular point, I think it's for the entire council to rethink what the vote means here in this particular case, that we will still get some public consultation, and we have already proved getting the RCMP and the fire department into it. So I would hope that we could move along in that direction to at least do that, so we're moving forward to getting public consultation. I understand you're concerned, Councillor Frass, that you wanted more. I thought we could expand it, but with the public notice is also in the paper as well. Right?
Please go ahead.
Could we also defer this third point though to when we're at full strength of council so that there is not a tie situation?
If I may, at the moment, there is
Already
no
voted.
motion. Yeah, it's not, it would need to be, a motion would need to be put forward and then deferred. There is no motion currently on the floor.
Or you could just leave it like this and then you could bring it back to the table. That one part at the next meeting. Yep. And that's what it amounts to. We'll get the report back from the fire department and the police department and the bylaws people. We'll get that report back and then we can decide whether somebody can make that motion on number 3 again, one way or another. And we can decide with the full council so that we don't have a tie. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would have preferred that we either rethought and put forward a motion this evening, but knowing policy that staff needs some direction, and that so this would basically mean that the motion that's on the table tonight be brought back forward at the next council meeting. Is
I
that
think I just
correct?
said that.
It has to be procedurally brought or asked.
Number 3 is the only part that has to come back to the meeting. The rest of it has already been passed. So it's point number 3. It will be brought back when we do this. I'm sorry, I can't change my vote. I believe firmly that we have to have public input on this and we need the public. That's what a major election was fought on last time. And yes, it was primarily about Orca Place then. And we were all bantering that we needed support from the public on this. So. Oh, Councillor Chandler. Sorry, I can't see you. It's totally black wherever you are, other than 2 eyes. There we go.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think obviously, not going to public consultation or not to have a public hearing has kind of divided things here. And I don't really see the reason why that had changed. It seemed like we were going down that path and that now changed. So it sort of changes the complexion of, what we want to do. And the problem is now we've got a situation where we've got notice 50 yards away, as Councillor Frass says. It gives us really no real credible input from the whole community about what's going on in this area. And this is a fairly big project. This is, it's 12 more months or less of having a supportive housing unit in town, which wasn't expected. So although I was fully prepared to go ahead with what we were doing before, I was fully prepared to move forward. But when public consultation and the public input was taken away, I just didn't feel that that was a good way to go.
Fair enough. Thank you. All right, so that's where we're at right now. We're going to move it on forward to the next meeting. Thank you. Reports. Al Wallace in the AWS Management Board Chair, Aerosmith. Is she on here? No?
If I may, Your Worship, this is just a written report from the board chair to, for council to consider approving the renewed joint venture agreement. This was recommended and approved by the board just recently, and this is reporting out basically to the council. on
So it
that.
should say correspondence, not reports.
If I may, I'm presenting it on her
Okay,
behalf.
fair enough. I need a mover and a seconder for points 1 and 2. Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Fraz, discussion. All those in favor? Councillor O'Brien, your report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to, regarding the ERWS Water Service Joint Venture Agreement, that the report from the ERWS Chair dated June 15th, 2022, regarding Englishman River Water Service Joint Venture Agreement be received. And part 2, that council approve the amended Englishman River Water Service Joint Venture Agreement for the term July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2027.
Need a seconder? Councillor Wilson, discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Bylaws, first reading, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.136. Text amendment to tourist commercial CS2 to allow automobile parking as permitted land use within the tourist commercial CS2 zone. I need a mover and a seconder for points 1 and 2. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Final adoption, the election procedures and automated vote counting authorization amendment bylaw 2022, number 1506.2. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion, all those in favor? Carried. Do we have any motions from previous meetings to bring forward? Notice of motions. I have one for the feasibility of a multifamily co-op housing project at 600 Alberni Highway with the Cooperative Housing Federation of BC. The following motion has been included on the agenda in lieu of notice, so council may vote on it at the June 20th, 2020 regular meeting. I need a seconder for my recommendation that council approve in principle the concept of working with the Cooperative Housing Federation of BC to explore the feasibility at their expense of developing the site at 600 Alberni Highway for multiple family co-op housing project and direct staff to provide technical service and land use information to support the investigation process for this study. Need a seconder for that? Councillor Chandler, thank you. Discussion? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a question, just confirming anyways, this is the site 600 Alberni adjacent to the train station?
It's, yeah.
Yeah, on this side of the train
On
station.
this side of the train
Yes.
station.
Did
7.5 acres there.
was it this organization that we approached before? It was a different organization?
It wasn't these people. This is the first time I've met with them.
Yes, because I understand there's some issues with services and so forth with the first.
Yeah,
one.
that was the Lions Club. that we were
Okay, so that
talking
was a
to at
different
that
one then.
time.
So
Yeah.
this is now a different proponent.
Yes.
Proposing to, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
If I may, could we also get some direction on the priority of this motion, just moving forward, knowing that we have a limited.
I'm not sure what priority we need other than to just hand them the pieces of paper on this one.
Okay, so if they reach out to us, we drop other things to get back to them?
No, we're saying to them, here's the site plan and here's where the services are, which we have from way back when. And those are the only two things they need from us, apparently. That's what they told us.
Okay, thanks.
Counselor O'Brien.
Just a question. Did they approach us?
No, I went to them.
Okay.
looking for it. All right, any other questions? Counselor France?
Just, I think, touching on our CAO's question there about priority, perhaps we can give her amount of staff time to allocate to it, like, no more than 3 hours type thing, if it's just a matter of handing documents or so on.
Sure, that's fine. We can do that if we
Does
want to
that
make a
give us some, does
resolution.
that give some kind of direction, or, not don't spend a lot of time on it. If it takes more, then come back to us to
That's fair.
3 hours. yeah.
Motion for 3 hours.
Counselor
Maximum.
Chandler has a,
Seconded by Counselor Chandler. You have a question? You have a question?
Yes,
Wait a
I do.
minute.
If it is my time to speak.
I'm not, no. Just hold on, we're gonna get this, we're gonna just change this just one slight bit. We're gonna put a friendly amendment on it to add a maximum of 3 hours service time.
Okay.
Is what we would do. All right, now, Counselor Chandler, please feel free.
Thank you, through your worship. Just, I think the co-op housing model is a fantastic model to approach. I just wanted to clarify, these would all be rental co-op housing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and do you have kind of a rough idea? I'm sure that you spoke to them, not so much in detail, but in what 7 acres would provide to us in housing needs, and what kind of housing would be in there?
No, and to answer your question, Counselor Chandler, they have no idea at this point in time. It'll depend on the dimensions of the property and the length and where the water lines will be brought in and so on. There's too many questions to answer on this at this point in time. That's why they said they would pay for it all to come up with the answers and make a
That's good value
presentation to us. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? And I shall call the question. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Counselor Chandler, you have one expansion of. the
Thank
scope
you,
of-
through your worship. You've all got a copy, I believe, of the of this particular motion. And just want to give you a bit of background on it, what my thoughts are on it. Firstly, it's in regards to putting, and I'll read the motion out after if I can, but just to put employee housing and affordable studio units into more commercial and industrial zones, expanding the number of units available, and also to look at sort of the back of certain properties, such as the property at Jim's Gym, for an example, to be able to take a property like that and add a cluster of houses in there, a cluster of condos or whatever it be. I think there's 2 or 3 really good reasons behind this. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel. There's quite a bit of this done already. And you can see in certain instances that there's more and more residential being put on commercial and industrial. But I don't think anybody's really thinking about adding sort of the staffing component housing to this. And at the backs of these properties, and several of them that are available, they look onto green space. And, it's basically to retain staff. It's to try to have our staff in this area rather than them living in Nanaimo because they can't find something here. And I think it makes good sense for the landowners that if they have the development dollars to do it, they could build some affordable housing on there, and they could also look at even maybe giving away that land or leasing that land to somebody that does want to put something in there. So that's my background on it. But so I'll read out the motion now that staff be directed to explore regulatory options for adding employee housing and affordable studio units as accessory uses to commercial and industrial zones.
I need a seconder for the motion. Go ahead. You got something?
Sorry if I may, Your Worship, not to sound like a broken record, but we need direction on where this lands in the priority list, given the limited time we have left before. the
You want
election.
that included in the motion?
I think it's helpful for us, like we have projects that are already kind of in the queue, and so just knowing what the expectation is for this is helpful for staff.
Councillor
council
Chandler has
doesn't-
his hand up. so
If we
he's
don't get
got
the priority,
answer.
we just put it at the bottom of the list, I guess, so that's fine too.
Yeah. Councillor Chandler?
Sorry, if I could just speak to that. This is not a high level scenario. It's just in keeping with what previous councils have done in the past and set us up for some good things in the future. That's all. It's just really to work towards it. If it's not done in this term, then it's not done. It's merely an opportunity to look at things like they did in the past with the coach houses and all the different units that are available. So it gives us some more options.
Okay.
It's another tool in the toolbox for looking at more housing and specifically affordable housing for staff. That's really all it is about. So there's certainly no quick fix here or bumping anything else off the radar. I think it's a moderate unit. So I would say it goes way down the list, and hopefully it's something that can be viewed at a certain time in next year or next term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I need a seconder. Councillor Fraz, discussion. Councillor Wilson, then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And, Councillor Chandler, it's great. I appreciate that you've put it down the list, but because I was thinking that this might be something that might come up with an OCP review in the next term as part of the, and my other comment was that it go to just to the bottom of the list right now. But so anyway, that's something that might be considered as in a broader picture next term. So thanks for the motion.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is a question to Councillor Chandler, if you could, Councillor Chandler. The written copy that we have in our package was not like what you just called out to us, as Councillor Fraz pointed out. You referred in your original one to approve an expanded scope for motion 22155. I didn't look that up. Is that 22155 an existing motion that was already passed that was similar to this? But now your revised motion has nothing to do with riding on 22155. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor O'Brien. And it was the reason for it is I didn't want it to slow down or impact or interfere with the motion 22155. I just wanted it to be a standalone and we could move it down the list and just for future considerations.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Fraz.
Yeah, I'm just going to mention that I think this is great to see a motion like this come forward, and even being a low priority, it keeps it on that kind of vision board for future councils and just down the line. So I think it's a great addition. I look forward to the day when this could be fulfilled.
Any other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Sure. Carried. All right, we're moving quickly now. I bet you we get done before 10:30. I need a mover and a seconder for recommendation. It's going to be slightly changed. The council approves a grant in the amount of $2,100 from council's contingency to the Seaside Cruisers for their car show event in Parksville on Friday night, based on added costs for enhanced traffic control and improved safety at the events. So they're coming to us for $2,100. They've asked us to provide $2,100 to help them defray the cost, since they didn't make any money on it for Parksville. So I need a seconder for that before that. Okay, Councillor O'Brien, go ahead. You've got, did you have a comment? No, that's fine. I'm not, I just brought it to the table. So you're the member of the Seaside Cruisers. So
yeah, thank you. Well, I just wanted to point out background on the Seaside Cruisers request here. The deal is that the Seaside Cruisers contribute a huge amount, thousands of dollars to different community organizations in our town. So the thing is it's not just going into the gas tanks. It's actually going to, you've seen them in the past anyways, they do announcements, news releases. They contribute an awful lot back to the community with all of the funds that they have from their car show weekend. So just let you know that a lot of this is going to come back into our community.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion for $2,100? Unanimous. Thank you. Didn't even get an adjournment. I need a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Great. Thank you.